The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from many places around the country today, in fact. Thrilled to be here with you. We're going to be live for the next hour talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective, and we're grateful to have this time with you. If you're watching us live right now, you might be watching us. Our big four that we're live on right now are YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope. And if you are on any of the big four watching us live, you can be interacting with us live. You can write a comment in the comment section right directly on those platforms, and it shows up here on my screen. Of course, I don't have that up, but I will momentarily. And we're excited to be able to interact with you because that's our favorite thing. Can I just be honest about that? Like, we love so many things about this, but the most fun part of this journey and being with you is that we get to interact with you live. So please feel free to write in on any of those platforms. But we are also live on a bunch more platforms, and I know Traven flashes things on the screen. Last week, we were welcoming those of you who are from Vaughn Live and many other platforms. So we welcome you. Now, if you want to watch the show in the recorded version as a podcast, you absolutely can. We are available every place that you could possibly find your podcasts, and we are free in those locations. And that's something that I'm really very proud of, that we're a free download. If you go to the place, now I've said that you can find us in any of the places where you find podcasts. If you go to the place where you find podcasts and you go, Shannon, you're a liar, you're not there, would you do me a favor and let us know? Because we'd like to be there. We want to be able to be available in all the places that you find your podcasts, where you can get a podcast download for free, because we think that that's important. So thrilled to be here with you on this Monday. For many of us here in the United States, this is a holiday. Not for everybody, but for a lot of people, this is a holiday, this Monday and next Monday. But we are here and we have a great guest for you. Bonnie Yates, Special Education Attorney Bonnie Yates, is going to be with us a little bit later on in the show, answering some questions that you guys have for her. I don't know why it's not letting me log into the chat. We'll figure that out. But again, I still can get it on this computer, so that's okay. It's reloading. I don't know what's happening. All right. But I always like to remind you at the start of the show that our whole mission here is to provide information and inspiration. That's what we're here for. We're entering our, this will be 10 years this year that we've been doing this show. So we've got quite a library that's available for you that you can find either on our website, autism-live.com, which is also a great place to pose questions. There is a chat button at the bottom. It is not a reactive chat, so no one will answer you back on that site, but whenever possible, we refer to the chat here. Certainly, we start our questions on Wednesday with Dr. Granpeesheh from questions taken from there. But also on our website, you can search any topic, we have playlists. If you like a certain, we do recipes here and that might be your thing, but you might also be like, I'm not interested in recipes. I want to know about how to deal with this behavior. So we have playlists that are curated for interests that you might have, but you can also search topics and search by guests, because we have a whole many videos with particular guests like our Special Education Attorney Bonnie Yates, or with Dr. Temple Grandin, or with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh for Asd Dr. Doreen. So I encourage you to utilize our website and our YouTube page like a library and find what you're looking for Uh, my dog is going to do that. She did this to me on Friday during Friday's show, where she's just going to scratch at the door the whole time. For those of you who watch the show, you know I'm in a different part of the house right now. We're quarantining my husband because he had some medical tests and had to be up at the hospital. So he's in his last 2 days of quarantine. So I have to be in a different part of the house. And the dog is like, great, you're here. We can play. She just doesn't understand. I'm doing a show. We'll have to have her make a guest appearance later. But in any case, we're just trying to keep it real here, right? We're here, though, to inspire and to provide information. If you don't find what you're looking for here, please tell us. Say, I really need you to do a show about X, Y, or Z. I will hunt down an expert, because that's the other thing we do here is we provide you access to experts. And I'm really proud of that too, but I always like to remind you, please don't confuse me with one of the experts. Yes, I've been in this community for a while, and I have been covering autism in this sort of a format for well over a decade. So I love to connect you to answers, and I have an informed opinion having been here this long, but I'm not an expert. Please don't confuse me with the expert. If we can have that deal, we will be just A-okay. I also want to say to you that this community that we serve, when I talk about our community, I'm talking about the bigger autism community that starts with individuals who are on the autism spectrum. They are the beating heart of our community. They're our reason why, right? But on our show, we include in our community everyone who loves those individuals, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a grandparent, a brother, sister, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. If you love someone who's on the autism spectrum and you're seeking answers and support and you want to know what's available to you, this is a great place to start, because we love to look for you. I'm the mom of an individual who was diagnosed with autism at 2.5, and we would not have gotten where we are, which is a great place, if it hadn't been for a community who lifted us up and said, hey, have you tried this? Do you know about this? Let me connect you. Here's a phone number. Call them. I think you would be interested in hearing what they have to say. So that's what we're trying to do here, is to create a safe space where you can get information and get hooked up to the services that are right for you, which is very individual. This is not a one-size-fits-all community. So we can't have just one answer. But we also need that support, that love from other people in the community to know that we're okay, that we're going to be okay, and that there's good things to be found and had in this community. So having said all of that, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's time for something that we refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are those experts talking about? Why do I have to learn this term? Why does it have to be this way? Well, the truth of the matter is that jargon, whether you're in the autism community or you're a waitress, jargon is the thing that speeds things up. And when we know what the jargon means, it's like another language, right? But when we know what it means, it has the potential to help us. When we don't know what it means, it has an effect of, it isolates us, because we feel like, oh no, I don't know, and I should know this, right? You don't need to beat yourself up. And the other thing is, you get very overwhelmed by the jargon. We look at the jargon, it's that phrase of, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So we just take one word, one phrase, one acronym. We give you, first of all, the actual definition. Then whenever possible, I make fun of the language in the actual definition, because it's written for I don't know who, but certainly not anybody I know. And then we give you a working definition and try to put it in context for you to give you a starting place. But if you don't get it the first time, don't worry. You will eventually. At some point, it'll all make sense and you'll go, that's what that thing is. So good morning, Ari. Ari says, I just started a GoFundMe for my son. We're trying to get a service dog for him. Can you please help us to share the page? I want you to know, Ari, that you feel free to post it on our social media, and we won't ask you to take it down. That's a perfectly acceptable thing to post to our page. We have a rule here that We don't necessarily post those things because there's so many. We would spend all of our lives doing that and monitoring them. But feel free, you have our best wishes to post it on our page, and I'm talking about it right now. So people should take a look at what you're doing, because a service dog is a great thing, and nobody does it without help from the community. Take a look on our playlist at all the shows that we've done about how parents fundraise for service dogs, grants that are available, and so on and so forth. And whoever your service provider, the service dog provider is, should be helping you to fundraise as well. But anyway, back to the jargon. And good morning, Jacinda. Thrilled that you are here. So our jargon term this morning, I think you can see it on your screens right now, is expressive language. This is a term you hear a lot, especially when your kids are in school. You go to do your IEP and they'll sit there and they'll say, well, their expressive language is here and their receptive language is here. And you go, huh, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And so let's see if we can shed some light on it. Expressive language. What's our actual definition, Traven? Bum, ba, da, bum. It might be sticking today. There it is. There it is. It's coming. Expressive language, the production of language, including speech, signing, and or gestures for communication. Wonderful. But, and that I love that because it reminds us that it is not all vocal. In fact, B.F. Skinner said that a significant portion of our communication is not vocal, that in fact, it's the smaller percentage. I've got FedEx trucks and things. My dog is going to make me crazy. Behavior modification tool. Great. But if I look at this and I'm not 100% sure what's the difference, because they always will say expressive and receptive, and I'm like, which one is which? I can't remember. So let's go on to our working definition and see if we can't make heads nor tails of this. So expressive language is the child or the individual's ability to communicate their needs. So I always like to think of it as arrows. So expressive is what goes this way. It's coming from me, going out to the world. It's what I want to communicate because I'm expressing myself, right? Receptive, which I think we'll do on Thursday, that's what I'm receiving. So if we're all, little radio stations with antennas, expressive is what I'm putting out. Receptive is what I'm taking in. So if you think about that, how able is any individual to, because we all want to be able to express our needs and our wants and our concerns, whether it be in an emergency or just to be able to share who we are with other people. Always reminding you that it's not all vocal. Sometimes it's an expression. Sometimes somebody, even people who have verbal communication, will gesture or sign. Somebody will say, I'm a former teacher, and the eyebrows and I would give people a look like this while they were taking a test, and they would know exactly what I was saying to them, right? It's communication. So, but we find that individuals on the autism spectrum, it's part of the diagnosis that sometimes some aspect of communication is hampered. It isn't always just that vocal, verbal aspect. We have people who are very high functioning that are on the autism spectrum that can talk a blue streak, but they have a flat affect, that they aren't someone. I always refer to Ben Stein. Ben Stein is an actor, made a career out of this, that, his face is very stoic, and he's the guy on Ferris Bueller's Day Off that says, Bueller, Bueller, and there's no expression in his face. There's no prosody is what we call it, that the voice is modulating, and so it's not the end of the world, but sometimes it makes it hard to communicate. I remember years ago having a student, and I'd done a workshop with this group of people that had asked me to come in to help them. They were having difficulty with something. And I came in and I did the workshop. And at the end, this young woman, who's hilarious, by the way, a brilliant comedian, and she was like, that was wonderful. I just loved that. And I said to her, I can't tell. Did you really love it, or are you being sarcastic? Like, I just couldn't tell. And I'm someone who's pushy enough that socially awkward enough that I said, do you mean that? But a lot of times people just go, I don't know whether she meant that or not, right? Imagine if that's all you were capable of doing and didn't understand that people didn't know whether to take you seriously or not. It leaves room for miscommunication, right? So I wanted to point out that I think we tend to think that expressive language is all about, can you say, I want juice? And it's so much more than that. It's understanding that if I need to, for instance, I'm standing there with someone and they're getting too close to me, like, how can I express to them that I need for them to step back? Or if the conversation has gone on too long, what do I do with my body to signal to that person, I need to leave, right? And the expressive side of it is being able to do that yourself. The receptive side of it is being able to recognize that when other people are doing it. So it's a lot more complex. There's a lot more finesse to it. And because I know people will say, well, I understand why you're teaching expressive language and care about expressive language with a 4-year-old, but I have a 19-year-old. So we're not really, and I have a fully verbal 19-year-old. We're not worried about this, except that there's much more to it. And a lot of the times what we see in social situations is that some little aspect is being dropped, whether it's on the expressive side or the receptive side. And when we can shore these things up and teach mad skills, then people are more successful and they are happier. And that's a good thing. So expressive language, super important. And I always say, as a mom and as a teacher, it's important to know when they give you those scores and the IEP and they go, well, your child's expressive language is here and their receptive language is here. I know you tend to go, whatever, and you tune out. But I think it's really important that we listen to those scores. Not that they're going to be 100% accurate 100% of the time, but it gives you a clue into, if I want to express something to my child, some kids, their receptive is higher than their expressive, and we would teach them in a different way because we teach to strengths and we shore up weaknesses, right? That's how we teach effectively. But if your child's expressive is off the chart and their receptive is not up to where that is, then you would teach in an entirely different way. And that's when things get exciting. Is when you see as a teacher, when you understand, okay, this person can hear me, but they can't express to me what they're saying, then I'm going to take a little bit more time with them on making sure that they have an opportunity that suits them to express back. Right? But for somebody who's highly expressive and has no receptive, I'm going to find lots of interesting ways to make sure that important information gets through to them, that I would probably, say it vocally, but have it in text, and gesture to it and highlight it so that they get important information. And many other little tips and tricks. But expressive language, we're all involved in that. We're all demonstrating that minute by minute, but all of us are different at it. Trivia question with Shannon: what do you think is stronger, expressive or receptive? I'm like off the chart expressive, and I need to work on my receptive. Right? Whereas my child does very well with expressive now, but his receptive is much stronger than his expressive. So we make quite the little team. In any case, I'm working on my receptive. He's always working on his expressive, but his expressive is much stronger than my receptive. Anyway, moving on. We always have a question of the day for you, and we love it when you guys write in your answer to the question of the day on whatever platform you're on. What is your favorite swear word? And we only want to know the first letter. Like, what's the swear word? And it can be that you cycle through them, but what's the swear word that makes you the happiest? Because, and you're probably like, Shannon, why are you asking us this? Because that's a form of expression. And, there's all these things now, these articles on Facebook that people will share that say that people who swear tend to test higher cognitively on IQ tests. I don't know if that's true. But I will tell you that part of the reason why we like swear words is because of the percussive sounds in them. Think about it. Think about they're expletives. So, we say that and there's like, it's almost like hitting something, but hitting it with our tongue and our teeth, right? So I cycle through different words that I like to say, and I'm an excellent swearer. But you know what we always like to say here, and our friend Matt Asner always says our favorite four-letter word is hope. That's for sure. And it has that percussive P in it. But I also like to engage. I know there are people who are like, that's so inappropriate. Well, there's a lot of things I don't do anymore. uh, you know, and as a parent of an individual on the autism spectrum, there were a lot of things that I was like, well, that has to go by the wayside, not doing that anymore, not going to this thing, not going to that thing. So there was a period of time where swearing was the only vice I had, that and chewing gum. Do you know what I'm saying? So you do whatever you have to do to get you through. Unfortunately, oh yes, we have people who are writing in Fs. Yes, that's a good one. That's a good one. So what else? Who else has something in their swear jar? First letter only. But when I'm in a swear fest, I thoroughly enjoy myself because it is one of the last vices I have. My apologies to people who are offended by that. But we will like to see more of what you guys like to say. Yes, Effarini. Yes, that's a good one. Okay, so moving on to our next, our topic of the day. This is a topic of the week, really, what we're going to be talking about throughout this week. And this is so important right now. Steam valves. Everybody has to have a way to let off steam. You do, I do. Every person that is on the spectrum needs a steam valve. Every person who's not on the spectrum needs a steam valve. 2-year-olds need a steam valve. 102-year-olds need a steam valve. And if you haven't experienced this in COVID, I would say to you, it's probably going to happen this week where you're you need a steam valve and it's the one that you normally have in place isn't available. I will testify that shopping is a steam valve for me, going and taking an afternoon and going not to a mall. A mall is too much sensory for me, but going to some discount shop and spending, I'm not kidding you, 3 hours and picking up and looking at everything in the store. I don't have to even buy anything. Often I don't buy something, but being able to go in a store and be with my thoughts and be alone is a steam valve for me. Now, please feel free to judge me. But that's what works for me. Well, I don't have that in my playlist during COVID. I haven't been in a store in almost a year. Not one store. So I had to find other steam valves. And, I'm still finding things that work for me, and maybe it works for me on this day, but it doesn't on that day. But if I'm going through that, and I think you could acknowledge, I can hear all of you shaking your heads going, yes, right? Then we have to go, okay, what about our kiddos? What was their steam valve before we were in this, great isolation? And what is it now? And do we have enough steam valves for them? And what could we add to the repertoire? What can we help to teach them? What can we provide to them so that they have more ability to let the steam out? Because if we don't plan for it, it's gonna come, right? So everybody needs a steam valve. And sometimes swearing is a steam valve. Now, depending on what the rules are in your house and how old your child is, it may not, might say it is inappropriate for my child to swear. I feel you. When my child got to be, well, I would say we're a little bit different. We started very early on with rules that there were certain things that he could say to express himself, but he could only say them at home, because we were working on building rules that made sense for the home, and you could only do them at home. You couldn't do them at school. And it was part of how we were making that work. Again, please feel free to judge me. You know what I always say, other people's opinions of my parenting is none of my business, because it's not, but this is what worked for us. I'm not suggesting that you do that, but I'm saying know what your policy is and know what it is at each age and each stage of development. We found that at 14, when my son was in high school and he would have game fests with his friends, and I would listen in and I would be horrified that these young men were swearing their faces off. And I would just go, this is terrible. Like, what have we done wrong? We're bad parents. And I was talking to one of the other parents in the group and I said, we got to crack down on this. This is not. And she said, you know what? They're young men and they have to try these things on. And as long as it's not, swearing that's anti anybody, why don't we just see where it goes? Let them burn it out and see where it goes. And I'm so grateful for that parent because I took another view of it, right? That was what was right for us. I think there was at least one parent in the group who was like, I don't want my son playing games with kids that are swearing, and pulled their kid out of the group for a period of time. I think everybody has to make those decisions for themselves, but it became important to us. We wanted him to have a steam valve. And I saw that he would come downstairs after one of these sessions with his friends and he would be like, oh, I had such a good time. And he kind of got some of his yayas out. I have another friend that gave her son bongo drums and said, I want you to go into the sit in the closet. You can cry, you can laugh, you can scream, you can be as loud as you want. And, beat those drums like you mean it, and get it all up and out. And that was his steam valve. What's yours, and what steam valve have you given your child? And when your child becomes a teen, is it time to change the steam valve? It might be, but everybody needs a steam valve. I have a very dear friend that early into COVID said to her daughter on the spectrum, what do you need? And she said, Mom, I need to scream. And they live in a place where it wasn't appropriate. And so she took her like up into the mountains, and they got out of the car and she said, go for it, baby. Scream. And the young woman screamed and she said, I feel so much better. You got to be safe about how you do these things, because if you're screaming in an apartment building, the police are going to come, right? And we don't need to be doing that. But what's your steam valve? What is your child? Mine is 8, and in anger, he swears so bad. And there's the crying symbol. And I feel you, that might be scary, but I'm all of the opinion, if swearing is the worst thing they do, right? That may not be your opinion, but if swearing helps him when he's mad, like, can you make a place in the house that's like, you have to be standing in the bathtub, and when you're in the bathtub, you can swear as much as you want, get it all out. But there's no swearing at the dining room table, and there's no swearing in the bedroom, but when you're in the bathtub, swear, and get it all out. I don't know if that works for you and your family, but I just know that what we're going through is unlike anything else we've ever gone through. And we need new ways of coping, and we all need a steam valve. I don't know what the steam valve is, but if it helps you to cope and it's not actively hurting anyone, I'm all for that. But it's got to fit with you and your lifestyle. Yeah. Okay. But thank you for sharing that. And imagine how frustrating it would be right now to be 8, and all the things that you want to do at 8 on the spectrum or not on the spectrum, and how horrible it must feel right now that you can't go where you want to go. You can't do what you want to do, and you don't have control over it, right? It's a pretty intense way of feeling. Thank you for writing in. And again, do what's right for you and your family. And if you really are adamant that there should be no swearing, maybe try the friend with the bongos and see, and he can think the swear word and beat on the bongos. But I think it's really important that we, make, the thing that was important for me was we were trying to teach my son, you can do this when you're at home or in the car, but you can't do it when you're in front of people. And then we were teaching, there's things you can't do in the car, you can only do at home. And then there's things you can only do in the bathroom, right? And there's things you can only do in your bedroom with the door closed. And so a lot of our kids, not all of our kids, are very rule oriented. And we found that worked really well. Hello, Amanda. We're so happy that you're here with your blue hearts. Okay. The dog is right here and saying hello to me. But I hear it's okay. There is no late. There's just here, right? You can join at any point, and remember that the show is recorded, so you can always catch up. Always, always, always. So it's time for us to welcome our guest for today. She is joining us right now. From the other side of the country, the fabulous Bonnie Yates. She is here courtesy of Tollner Law Offices, where she is a special education attorney extraordinaire. And we are so thrilled to have her back. We haven't been able to meet with her for a couple of weeks. So Bonnie, welcome back.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. I'm supposed to say that I'm an attorney. I'm one of 7 attorneys that works at Tollner Law Offices. We're a California-based firm. We kind of cover most aspects of the disabilities, special education, regional center. We can give you some help on insurance coverage for autism, although we're not specialists in that area, but we have contacts that are specialists. And if you want a free consultation with one of the lawyers in our office, you can go to our website at Tollner Law Offices, and there's a short form. It'll take you 5 minutes to fill it out or 1 minute to fill it out, and then we can set up a consultation with you. We are giving general advice on the show. We are not giving advice about your specific legal problem, and we're mostly answering questions under California law because we're in California. But IDEA is a federal program, so we also are giving you answers sometimes that are federal in nature. But what we strongly suggest is if you have a specific problem, and Lord knows people do, especially after the last 9 months, you go to an attorney, and if it's not in California and we can't help you, you go to COPA, COPAA.net, and that is a list of what I consider to be reputable attorneys who are committed to helping children with disabilities, and you can find somebody in your own state. Now, I just want to, before we get to the questions, because Shannon has a bunch of meaty questions you sent in, I do want to tell you something that I learned apropos insurance coverage. We have a client, she needed to remove her child from public school. They wouldn't let him be in general ed. She put him in private school, private parochial school. She lives in California. She went to another attorney that I know, and he helped her prepare for asking her insurance company to let her use her ABA hours at school. Now, this child is young, he's only 6, but this attorney has had a lot of luck getting insurance coverage in these situations. And when I asked him why, he said, well, A, if the child is in private school, there's not the same expectation as if they were in a public program, and the insurance companies may be more likely to allow that. What he did was he did her initial submission. So like he helped her put together the right documents along with her ABA provider to submit to the insurance company. When the insurance company said no, then he did an independent medical review for her, which is where you basically present the case to a doctor hired by the insurance company, and he got the hours approved. And so this is a really good stopgap measure for her child, because it's very cost effective compared to due process. And so that's just something to consider. It's another avenue for you. And I'll just tell everybody, you can look the attorney up if you want to on CalBar. His offices are in Newport Beach, but he works all over the place. His name is Randy Curry, Curry, and he's very reasonable in terms of what he charges for this. So I just wanted to mention that because I wasn't really aware that the trigger can be, well, the child is in a private school, and private schools don't have an IDEA menu of services. And B, what Randy apparently does is he uses existing evidence to show that failure to provide the aid is going to, or the behavior therapist, I don't like to use the word aid, is going to result in irreparable harm to the child. And he says that if you have worsening behaviors or worsening social isolation, or, if any of the disability aspects are kind of getting ramped up by the being out of school or dealing with distance learning or whatever, he can sell that to the insurance company and successfully. So that's a great thing. I mean,
That's amazing. That's great news. Very useful news.
Yeah.
So tell the attorney's name again.
Randy, and the last name is Curry, Curry. And all you do is go to CalBar, and they have an attorney list. You can look him up. Okay. I don't want to quote what he charges on the air, because I just feel a little funny doing that. But I got to tell you, nobody can do a due process for that little. Now, he's very reasonable. Now, here's the thing, though. Like this client, she got the services approved for 6 months. And so she's probably going to have to revisit the issue in 6 months. If we got a placement, whether it's via an IEP or a settlement agreement, there would be stay put. There's not stay put in this situation, but it ain't exactly easy to get the district to pay for ABA in a private school. And so if time is of the essence and you got to get your kid back into school, this is an option to consider.
Yeah, and I always say, I don't know that it's true, it's much harder to take something away when you can show that it's working. But I don't know. We're in the wild, wild west, and we don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. But what a great thing to know for now.
Yeah. Anyway, he's a reputable attorney. The other thing he does is he sues insurance companies for bad faith failure to pay under the policies. So if your ABA provider is jerking you around, not your ABA provider, sorry, if your insurance company is jerking you around, thus putting your ABA provider in a position where it's hard for them to advocate because they're essentially forced to please two masters, I would definitely give him a call, because I think he can do some kind of incredible stuff very efficiently.
I got to say, what we're seeing a lot of right now, and we kind of knew this was coming, because, when you have insurance, you go through a reauthorization on a regular basis, and they keep making it more about the reauthorization than give services. So it used to be, you got authorized for a year and then it was 6 months. Now sometimes it's 3 months. Mm-hmm. So your provider is having to do constant paperwork to prove why you should still get the service. But we're seeing across the board that as we hope we're moving out of COVID, a lot of people didn't have access to ABA or didn't utilize ABA because of coronavirus, and they were socially distancing. And now that they're coming back to it, insurance companies are reducing the number of hours that they said that they would authorize. And I'm telling parents, get a denial in writing and appeal.
And you know what I would add to that? If people possibly can, I would strongly recommend that they consult with Randy in California, because not all appeals are equal. And he knows what information to get in front of the insurance company at the initial request stage and then later at the IMR.
It's insidious, I'll tell you, Bonnie, because like what I'm seeing with a lot of our families is that, let's say that they've requested, the ABA provider requested 25 hours. The insurance will come back and say, well, we're only approving 22. No reason, right? So then the family has to make a decision. Do I really want to go through the appeal process for 3 hours? And I'm saying to them, yes, you should appeal and ask for more than the 25 and cite COVID, because they're trying to make it so small of an amount that you'll go, okay, because but then the next time they'll come back and say, oh, 15. It's terrible. Can you tell how much I love insurance companies? I do, because when they do what they do right, they provide the help and support and financial support to be able to get the right therapy. I do love insurance companies.
My response to that is that you're incredibly polite.
Well, there is that. I'm not.
The reason insurance companies have money is because you guys pay premiums, and they're hoping that you're not going to make a claim.
That's right.
they took on this autism thing because they were kind of forced to, and I think they're trying to get control back.
Yeah, yeah, they are, and they're really trying to utilize, you know, where families are in COVID, and that's, to me, that's dirty pool. But shall we launch into some questions here, Bonnie?
You have questions, I have answers.
Okay, great. I love that because I always have questions.
Theoretically.
So, first question is, school is saying we can't have ABA on the IEP. Can they really do that? If it's so effective, why can't we stipulate that it's how our child should learn?
Well, this was a hotly litigated issue because the IDEA says you can't um, cause a district to choose a methodology, and they've hidden behind that. But I think if you have someone who can attend your IEP, who can make the case that ABA is the only way your child can learn, and you have a discussion about what process is implicated in that learning and why other types of learning don't work, they would have to give fair consideration to the idea that you needed ABA to learn, and sort of try to get away from that methodology argument, which is a real problem in this context. I mean, in general, it's a problem that we have because methodology is everything, right? Like if you're trying to learn how to read and you don't have a research-based literacy intervention available in the district, then you're not going to make progress using what the district has instead, that's less expensive and maybe older and didn't require as much teacher training. So you will run up against a methodology argument. And I think what you probably want to do is talk about what other things have been tried and weren't successful and why this would be. And then if they say no, you make them give you prior written notice, and that's the basis of your due process.
I have to tell you, this question was asked
Let me just say, it's going to be a cold day in hell before every child with autism has the ABA program in public school that they should have. Doreen Granpeesheh, probably somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago, we were talking about this, and she said, Bonnie, it's not as if we don't know what works. Like, we know what works. We know what works. And the rest of this is just a game. There's two ways they play it. They either say no to methodology, or they say, yeah, you can have our district IBI. And then you get somebody in, a psychologist in, to look at that IBI, and it bears no resemblance to having a card program. It's just, you can take a marker and write IBI on my face, and that doesn't mean it's a beneficial program. And that's kind of what they're doing with the IEP.
Well, I have to tell you that the way this question came about was somebody asked this during Ask Dr. Doreen last Wednesday, and Dr. Grant and Dr. Granpeesheh was saying, we were talking about it. I said, when I had this happen, that you had said to me, listen, there's more than one way to get what you want. You can either, fight it this way, but they're going to say that you can't stipulate as to the methodology, or if you're 100% clear with what you want and CARD is clear with what they want, then you can go in and say, we want this, this, and this written into the BIP. You don't call it ABA, but you say what you're asking for. And that was what we eventually did. And she said, Dr. Granpeesheh said, go back to Bonnie and see if they can, at this point in the game, she said, with all insurance paying for ABA and everybody widely accepting how effective it is, ask her, can they still make the methodology argument? So what I'm hearing is they can, but you really can fight it.
Yeah, and you can always amend the behavior support plan.
There you go.
And that might be a better way to go, but you would run the risk of people interpreting the behavior support plan in a way different than you wrote it. I mean, yes. It's 2021, and I just had a call from a family in the South Bay, and their question was like, what great schools are there for high functioning kids with autism in this area? And I shouldn't be having to go like this and like think. Oh, okay. And there's like very few options, and some of them I don't really consider to be great. Like, why, if we have this pervasive disability, like if the insurance companies can do it, why can't the districts?
Yeah, and they can. I think that's the disappointing thing. Are they in the Bay Area, the North Bay Area, or the
No,
Bay Area, the
they're,
South?
they're, they're in Hermosa Beach.
Okay. Yeah. And then I'm still scratching my head with that one too. In the North Bay area, I have a school that I recommend to everybody, but not in Huntington Beach. So there you go.
Yeah, Northern California, I've learned since I've been with Tollner, has more what David Tollner calls specialty schools. There's a lot more options for kids up there.
Yep. And why we can't do that down here, although I do recommend Chime down here, but that's not the Bay
Yeah,
Area.
you'll never get in.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, because everybody wants in there. In any
I mean,
case,
we could talk about, sometime we could have a conversation about like schools that our clients get placed in, and just give your audience a little flavor for what some of those schools are like.
yeah,
They're important. And, now some of our kids with autism are also having to address a specific learning disability.
yep,
And schools that do that are important and few and far between.
absolutely.
Nobody has explained to my satisfaction yet, and I'm just throwing this out to you, Shannon, maybe you know the answer. Nobody has explained to me what this comorbidity is, where so many of the kids with autism are hyperlexic, but they don't understand what they're reading. Like, what's causing that?
I don't know what's causing it, but you know that CARD has worked really hard over the last 17 years trying to phenotype autism. And on the good news, they've been able to phenotype 17 species of autism, and that's one of them.
Mhm.
And what they're looking at is what's the most effective way of teaching to that. But
Mhm.
cause, I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah.
But it's
Anyway,
it's
this is
very
one of
definite
my
type.
one of my
I want to
frustrations.
say,
It's
yes,
not
I want
enough
to.
to have autism. You also have to have a specific learning disability, please.
Yeah, rough. I also want to say to Johanny, who's written in a question, we are going to get to your question before we're done, but I have to get to a few more of these with Bonnie. Somebody wants to know, should we postpone our IEP until we know whether it will be distance learning? I'm in LAUSD, and we're hearing that they will require the vaccine in order to attend school in person in the fall. Our child has extenuating health concerns. In addition to ASD, we are not sure whether he will be approved for the vaccine. We could be distance learning for a while. And I just want to say that since Austin Butner made that comment, he's the superintendent of LAUSD schools. He made a comment a couple of weeks ago about that they would be, if you want your child to attend in person in the fall, that they would be requiring the vaccine. Within 48 hours, he walked that back because, as we pointed out here on the show, there is no vaccine that has been approved by the FDA as yet for children. In fact, for anybody under the age of 18. So, he's assuming that that will be in place by then. So he had to walk it back. But Bonnie, should they postpone their IEP and say we want
No,
to
I
do it
don't
later?
think so. I've struggled a lot with this question, and in the process of trying to get ground under my feet the last 9 months, I don't think I can say it enough. I feel as um, kind of blindsided by a lot of the things that have happened as anybody does, I think. So it occurred to me at a certain point that no, you don't want to postpone IEPs. What you want to do is you want to get together with them and tell them what you need and what you're getting and why it isn't working, and ask them to provide it. And then if they say no, you've got a bad offer on file. So if you need to sue them, there's something happened during those months. It's not like, you know, it's useful depending on what your angle is. Like if you're of the opinion that the way you have to get what you need is through litigation with the district, you want bad offers that you can beat at due process. So I've been telling my clients to please engage with the district and tell them everything that's happening during distance learning, and ask them to come up with a way to improve things. because it's not working. So have
Yeah.
that IEP, start the process.
And I think we forget a lot of times, Bonnie, that we can, have an IEP meeting and have a plan, but if something changes or is different, we just call in a new IEP meeting.
Exactly.
Okay. So next question. My son has an ASD diagnosis. He's 5 and attending kindergarten online this year. We had completed our IEP before COVID and he had speech and OT services. It has been a nightmare. It took forever them to figure out how to do speech online and they never really figured out the OT. Now they are making recommendations for the new IEP and they are removing OT. Their rationale is he did okay without it. Please tell me this is as stupid as I think it is.
You can invoke stay put
Okay.
and say that you don't agree and you don't see how they could know unless they're going to reevaluate him and compare where he was in terms of his benchmarks at the last recording period to now. I mean, that's just a wholesale, not very clever, not very sexy, taking advantage of the situation, just like you were saying the insurance companies are saying, well, you did fine, so no, that's wrong and you should object to it and you should fight it.
It's so demoralizing, I think, for all of us to go, really, while we're down, you want to play games,
I'm still
but
here, I'm still in this place, yeah. Yeah.
I will say it's an opportunity for us as parents to stand up, flex our muscles, right? And exercise the things that we've learned and go, no, not on my watch. You don't have to have a nervous breakdown over it. You don't have to get upset. You just say, no, we'll be exercising the stay put. And if you want to, as Bonnie said, if you feel that he doesn't need it, where's the evaluation? Like
Where's the
put them,
data?
yeah, where's the data?
And
Okay,
then
next question.
once they tell you that, Shannon, I should have said this, you ask for an IEE.
Okay, that independent educational evaluation that they have to pay for.
That's exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we are starting the process of asking for comp ed, compensatory education, this summer. Can you outline the steps of how we pursue this? My hope is to get them to pay for a one-to-one tutor for the summer. My fear is they will offer a summer school in person with masks. My son is in 4th grade. He has missed so much academically this year, and I am concerned that a summer of masks will not come close to getting him caught up.
They don't say whether they're in California or another state, do they?
They don't.
I mean, here's the thing about compensatory education. The IDEA explicitly recognizes it as a remedy for a failure to provide FAPE. And secretly, I think all the school districts know they didn't provide FAPE from at least March 11th until the end of ESY. So you can make a case for comp ed based on that, but unless you're going to be able to sue them and force them to the negotiating table, I don't know that they're going to give it to you. You might be able to tell them you'll enter into a settlement agreement with them to waive claims for the COVID time period if they give you certain things that you want. But typically, the good compensatory education results are after a due process filing. And I don't mean to be like one of these people, who's like in la la land and assuming that everybody can bring a lawsuit. But the truth of the matter is, if you have a good case, you really can. If at least in California, you can go to the OAH website. There are free or low cost attorneys, and you should at a bare minimum be discussing your case with an attorney. They won't charge you. And even if you're not going to use the attorney, you'll get a lot of really good information in terms of how to present your case to the school district. But we've talked about this before on the show, and it continues to be true. In really all aspects of litigation in the United States, people are much more successful when they do these things with lawyers. And, I don't like that. I would rather my job become unnecessary, but that's the reality. And I feel like I need to share that with you, especially if there's a vehicle for you getting someone to represent you, free of charge. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah. I think people have fears and our fears are always that, what if I can't afford it? What if, because then it will feel extra bad. But I will say this.
OAH list has low cost and no cost referrals. Okay.
So is that on the copaa.net? Where
No,
is
that's
that?
California Department of Education.
Okay.
They have an
If,
attorney.
if you're not in California, though, go to copaa.net.
No, I don't think, well, to get an attorney, yes, but if you're specifically interested in a free or low cost attorney, I would contact your state Department of Education and see if they maintain a list.
Okay, we did have somebody wrote in and said, what is an IEE and what does it tell you about your child? Is the psychoeducational assessment different from an IEE?
No, it isn't. It's what's different is this. If the district does an evaluation and you disagree with it, then if you can show what's wrong with the evaluation, you can write the district a letter and ask them to pay for an outside evaluation at district expense. So when we do well in these cases, what we'll get is an agreement to provide not only just the psychoeducational evaluation, but speech, functional behavior, OT, and that's a real game changer once there's some evidence out there that's not the district's evidence. So
So
there's an
again, the IEE stands for,
independent educational evaluation.
and that is something that you can ask for, you have a right to, and the district has to pay for it.
No, you ask for it and you give your reasons, although you don't have to give any reasons. And the district either has to pay for it or they have to file for due process. They can't do nothing. They don't
Okay.
usually want to file for due process because it creates an additional, it's an additional filing, it's an additional legal project, and they don't have, time to take things on. The other thing I want to say is if you ask for an IEE and they say no and they do file against you, all you have to do is withdraw your request and the filing goes away. So it's really not dangerous to ask for it. And in many cases, they will grant it because they think if they give it to you, you're going to shut up and go away.
Yeah. So you get ready for your IEP or your triannual IEP, and they will assess your child, and then you sit down with them and they say all these things about your child, and you go, I don't think that they tested well. I don't agree with their findings, whatever. This is when sometimes parents feel like, well, it's over. They did their evaluation and I've got nothing to fight it because I can't afford to go pay for experts to say something different. It's the ideal time to ask them for the IEE. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to save the rest of the questions that we had for next week because we're running out of time. But I'm going to get to Johanni's question, and you're welcome to stay, Bonnie. It is not specifically a lawyer question, but I'd love your opinion on it. But you might need to go. What are your thoughts? It's about finding a pediatrician.
Well,
do you want to stay or go? You might have a business.
I'm going to answer it and then go. And
okay.
Don't be mad at me. Don't shoot me.
We won't shoot you. Let me read the question, though. They said, how do we find like-minded doctors? Our pediatrician is pretty useless. He doesn't agree GFCF diets are even effective for kids with autism, doesn't agree with our need for EEGs, etc. He does think we should treat for ADHD, even though he agrees he doesn't have enough information since he's in class online only the last 12 months. We are located in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So what is your answer to that, Bonnie?
Don't get mad at me, guys, and I might not be current, but all those people that were DAN doctors, all they had to do was take a 13-hour course, and then they turn around and they charge families $500 or $600 an hour. And I felt like a lot of them were disreputable and profiting on the situation. I am not anti-science. I am not anti-vaccine, although I recognize that in some cases, there may be a need for a medical exemption. What I saw was not a lot of good. I saw people investing in false hope and getting charged a lot of money. And I saw treatments, experimental treatments, come and go over the years. And basically, the thing that I saw that helped kids the most was ABA. Now, that is not everybody's view, and people have had positive experiences with the diet and with a whole lot of other things. Your pediatrician, unless maybe they have their own autistic child, is going to be mainstream, and they're not going to sit with you and discuss things for 2 hours. And if you need that kind of medical support, you're going to be able to get it, but you're going to have to pay a lot of money for it. None of these guys that I've ever seen takes insurance. So I'm not sure, like-minded doctors, I'm not sure that a nutritionist wouldn't be better, I mean, maybe a functional medicine doctor, but I have a hard time with a lot of what I've seen. I've seen people spend a lot of money for stuff that didn't pan out. So that's just my
Well,
point of view. And I'm being very
absolutely.
honest, and I apologize if I've offended anybody.
I don't think you've offended anybody. I think you're entitled to your opinion, and I think we all appreciate hearing from you. I agree with some of what you said, and some of it I have a different experience. And I think I think it's important that we present everybody has a right to whatever. My son had
Well,
saw
I don't
tremendous
know.
improvement on
People don't
GS.
have a right to expose other people to COVID.
Well, I
It
think
doesn't.
we can all agree
I
on
mean,
that.
people that right, but I'm just saying everybody doesn't have access to the same information, I guess is the problem. Anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, we appreciate you. I know you got to run. I'm going to stay, and unless you want to stay and hear my opinion on this, and you're welcome to do that.
I would
I,
like to know, but I do have to go, so I
okay.
apologize. And um, I had a particular experience with Nick, and I do recognize that that was only one experience. So
And me too, likewise.
I'm always interested in learning from other people who've done something that I don't know about.
Well,
I just haven't had clients have the best experiences with the damn doctors. Let me just put it like that.
well, and let me say that the Dan doctors don't exist anymore.
Right.
Some of them migrated over to MAPS, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But Bonnie, I appreciate you. You're with Tollner Law Offices. How do people reach you at Tollner?
Just go into the website and fill out the form, and then we will set you up with your initial consultation, which we don't charge for.
And so if you are, and there's the website, specialeducationcouncil.com. If you are in California, Northern or Southern or Arizona or parts of Nevada, Tollner Law Offices services are available to you in those states.
Unfortunately, we lost our Nevada attorney.
Okay, so just California and Arizona then.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, madam. We'll see you next week. Are you with us next week?
I am.
I appreciate you.
Okay.
You take care too.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I know we've thrown a lot of jargon at you guys today. So the Dan doctors, Dan was something that Bonnie referred to, was an organization, and what it stood for was Defeat Autism Now. That was a very controversial name, and many self-advocates said, what are you talking about? It sounds like you want to wage war against us. That wasn't what their intention was. They were trying to figure out, back in the day, they were, using the word cure and looking for cures. I think everybody's aware of the fact that that's not politically correct, that nobody's looking to cure anything, that but what they're looking for is support and help and being able to minimize the disabling aspects of autism, and the health considerations, but being respectful of the language we use. So Dan was abolished, and a new group was formed that's called MAPS. Gosh, and I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember what MAPS stands for, but it's medical something pediatrics. And doctors get together. What I like about MAPS is that they have conferences, they get together, they share research and experience so that they're talking to each other. I don't like that, one doctor tries a protocol and it's doing amazing things, but the other doctors don't know about it. But I agree with Bonnie that it's very, when you work with MAPS doctors, they're very expensive. They don't usually take insurance. It's horrifying how much they charge. And they're not all, they come into MAPS with whatever their specialty was. So for instance, there's a great doctor that I love here in close by Los Angeles, that he was a sports medicine doctor, had a child who was diagnosed on the spectrum, went to the MAPS conferences to learn what he could about his child, and then started a side practice with his wife, a very thoughtful practice to be able to help kids on the spectrum who are having health issues, right? But then there are other doctors who come in and they're neurologists. So they're coming at it from an entirely different base than someone who's in sports medicine. And then there are other people come in and they're osteopaths or naturopaths, or, you know, they come from all these different disciplines. And so you're going to have a vastly different experience depending on which MAP doctor you take. And I always say, ask questions, find out if they're MAP certified and what their core practice was, and you want to ask questions. Paying such a high premium that a lot of them are not interested in taking questions. And I just don't recommend that you go to somebody who won't take questions. But if your core question was, how do we find like-minded doctors? When my son was diagnosed with autism, we were with a pediatrician with an office that had a pediatrician that their child was also on the spectrum, and my son was going to an early intervention with his son. And so I had the opportunity to have many conversations with this doctor, and we were polar opposite. That I was looking at the behavioral intervention and he was saying different things that I did not agree with. But he was like the big pediatrician where we lived. So I went on the hunt and asked everybody, like, who is open-minded, like that I can ask questions. And I had my list of things that the doctor had to be able to do, that I needed to be able to get a hold of somebody in the office 24/7, that they ran a service that was reputable and didn't just say, go to the ER, that they would say, go to the ER, but I'm calling them and telling them to expect you. Because we had an ER visit that went horribly wrong. And I'm lucky that my son is alive because we didn't have a doctor who was advocating for us. So that was one of the things on my list. And I wanted someone who was going to not tell me, but listen. And it took me a while, but I found that office, I found that doctor, and he had a practice, and there were other people in the practice that did not necessarily espouse that. So I had to be careful, that there were two doctors that we would say, no, we'll wait longer for an appointment with them. It takes time. And the one doctor who ended up being my son's physician until I think 6 months ago, because, he needs to move to an adult doctor. He would say to me, I went in and I said, we're doing the gluten-free, casein-free. And he said, I have to be honest. I don't really know that much about that. But he said, I'm willing to learn. And then what he did was he watched how my son did. And so I know then he said to other parents who came after me, he said, listen, I don't know that much about the gluten-free, casein-free diet, but I've got another mom here and she's willing to take questions. And so I know they got treated to a different experience. That's all I wanted but it took a while. And I had to ask a lot of people, and I went to doctors' offices, and I, would go on one visit and go, this is not the one. And can I also say that when insurance kind of went wonkinator, we had to pay extra to be in network with that doctor. And we didn't move for 2 years because I wanted to be with that doctor. Because I think having a like-minded or someone who's at least open to listen is everything, is absolutely everything. But, you can put your child on a GFCF diet without a doctor ordering it. You can say to the doctor, I want an EEG for my child because I want to rule out subclinical seizures. And if they say no to that, you can appeal that decision and you can go to another doctor. And I would. If you are willing to do an EEG, we should all do an EEG with our children right now to get a baseline, whatever age they are. I wasn't willing to do it because I just didn't want to go through that. I wish I had, and everyone should get an EEG for their child. And if your doctor is saying that your child with autism, they're probably saying it because they know it's going to be difficult and that it's going to be hard on you, but they should not just out of hand say no. And you can appeal that. But I would certainly, he's saying that you should treat the ADHD. So I'm guessing that's medicine, but agrees he doesn't have enough information since he's in class online for the last 12 months. you know, I think that some medicine for ADHD is so effective and works for some people. I like to say, have we done everything before the medicine? Like, have you taken pesticides out of the diet? Because we know that there's a correlation between pesticide and ADHD behavior. So I would put your child on a purely organic diet, as much as you can afford to, for a couple of months and see. And I would also take out all the artificial colors and flavors, and I would take out most of the sugar out of their diet and see, does that move the dial before I would do medication. That's just me. But let me say that the best place where you're going to find the best information from other parents is TACA, TACAnow.org, the Autism Community in Action. I really encourage you to go. I think it's like $27 to join. You don't have to join to get information and look at all the things that they have online. But if you join, then you're eligible for a free TACA mentor. And that's a parent who's been through training and is responsive and to your needs and has access to that hive mind of parents who have been there and done that. And I think that whether you decide to go with a MAPS doctor or you decide to find a pediatrician that is like-minded, or you do both, that MAPS doctor is going to help. The TACA mentor will help you to negotiate all of that, and they will know things and have access to other parents who know things. So the MAPS doctors, again, are doctors that there's an organization that certifies, they have conferences, and what it's certifying is that they've attended these conferences, and so they're learning about autism and about what's current cutting edge treatment for autism. You can go to their website. They're called MedMaps. I think it's medmaps.org. I'm not opposed to meds. I just think we should have supporting data before putting them on the meds. I think that's really reasonable. And if you're not getting that from your pediatrician, don't be afraid to go someplace else. You don't necessarily even need to tell the doctor you're going. Try another doctor's office. And if you see that it's working better, then you just quietly leave. It's hard to jump from one thing until you know you have another thing. But yeah, clean diet, no colors, etc. We'll go and check out TACA. Thanks. We are way past time, and Traven is getting the hook. I love you all. We're back tomorrow with Dr. Temple Grandin, recorded Dr. Temple Grandin, not a new show. But then we are live with Dr. Granpeesheh on Wednesday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. I'm muted. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I am here with the lovely, fabulous, and brilliantly intelligent Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. This is a segment that we do on Wednesday mornings called Ask Dr. Doreen. It's my favorite time of the week. So thrilled to be here with her, and in just a second, she is going to start answering questions that you guys write in. But first, let's talk about a couple of things. We're live right now. I always have to check the date. It is the 10th of February, and I'm getting some feedback here, so I'm going to lower my speakers a little bit. But we're excited to be here with you live. I'm wearing red because it's Valentine's Day week. So we're excited to be here, and we are on many more platforms than we've ever been before. So we are live right now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope. Those are the big four, but we are also live on many more sites today. Every day we're adding more sites because Traven, our producer, is fabulous. So we are saying hi to Humera. Hello and welcome. Good vibes. Yes, many, many good vibes. I wanted to start today, Dr. Granpeesheh, with a follow-up to a question that you had answered last week. We had a viewer who wrote in very concerned because her child had been through a traumatic experience at a dentist's office and was exhibiting some pretty intense signs of anxiety. And you had given some suggestions about seeking out professional help last week, but also about things that you can be doing at home while you're getting the professional help about making their day more fun. I just want to say that she wrote back, again, this is a 10-year-old. on the autism spectrum, traumatic experience at the dentist, who's having panic attacks, super high anxiety, and as she says, some self-harm. She says, Dr. Doreen answered my question last week, and she told us this time that he's on a medicine, guanfacine, 1 milligram at night. She says, I really haven't seen any difference in his anxiety or panic attacks. They're still happening. He's still harming himself. And she goes on to say, you also said to make his day very fun and positive. I've been trying very hard to make his day very fun, but I just can't do it all day long. I have 2 other kids to attend to, and I'm the only one with him during the day as my husband has 2 jobs. So, but still having a high amount of anxiety. Is there any follow-up that you want to give her at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's making his day fun is a good thing, but it isn't going to be the answer on its own. I really think, especially because he's exhibiting self-harm, I really do think that you need professional help, and it would be important to get together with you can start with, if you have contact with a behavior analyst, they might be able to help you at this point by placing staff in your home so that he is not alone and not allowed to self-harm. But at the same time, I really feel like he has experienced trauma. And so it would be important to get together with a psychologist, and that would have to be someone who kind of understands the autism world, and understands how our kids can experience things more harshly than anyone else, because what happens in their environment is often much more intrusive for them. Let's put it that way. So, and guanfacine can help. It's probably not sufficient. He's 10 years old. There are many other medications that, and higher doses of guanfacine as well, that could help calm him. And, you got to be careful with self-harm, because while you're trying to make his day positive, which is the right thing to do, and to reduce demands, accidentally, you could also be rewarding his self-harm. And that's a very important distinction. We don't want to, reduce demands or give rewards right after self-harm occurs, because that will definitely increase the self-harm. So from the child's perspective, it'll be kind of oh, well, this worked. Every time I do something that scares people, they let me just do what I want to do. And that's not what we want. So I think it's really important to just get together with a professional. My recommendation would be, at this point, for you to find a psychiatrist who can help with medication, and a behavior analyst who can set up a behavior intervention plan in your home, and who can train you and other family members to kind of deal with this situation. And if your child is high functioning enough where talking about it is possible for him, then a psychologist would also be very helpful.
Okay, wonderful. We have a question, a lengthy question that's come in from India, and I'm gonna try to condense it down. Thank you so much, Sajal, for writing to us. A boy just turned 4, diagnosed with ASD at the age of 2.5, does not have siblings. They started it with 7.5 hours a week of ABA. They were doing other things, 2 hours a day of neurotypical play with school shadow, OT 2 hours a week. He was verbal at the time of diagnosis, but it was mainly tacting, low manding, and low interverbals. Since COVID, he's getting 45 minutes of ABA a day, then 45 minutes of online class with neurotypical kids from school, and continuing with the OT. They're getting some RDI once a week, and they recently joined Skills. So they have the Skills software for 2 months. His latest evaluation says that he has ASD with no language impairment and intellectual impairment. So I don't know if that's no language impairment and no intellectual impairment, or we're saying that he does have intellectual impairment. Maybe Sajal will write us back and tell us. But it's his social skills with peers that are really a problem. He has an obsession with animals, which limits his conversation and social skills. Unless they're in a very structured activity, he perseverates on that and wants to do animal noises, pretend animal noises. And so they're wanting to know, will if they get him a 20 to 24 hours a week ABA program with one-to-one therapy, would it help him with this and with his deficits? They say they try to stimulate him as much as possible. He does not, and they wrote back and said he does not have intellectual impairment. So for a child like this, would a 20 to 24 hour program, ABA program, help them?
Yes. Wonderful. So glad that you wrote all the detail. Let me just start by saying yes, absolutely. The very first point that I wrote down for myself as Shannon was reading was that the intensity of ABA he's receiving is not high enough. It is extremely low. What he was, 45 minutes a day or even 7.5 hours. So, and I like the question because it is a question that a lot of parents ask me, and we should just touch on this briefly because, as parents, we see the deficits. And so, this is a great example because this is a child who has language and he has no intellectual impairment. And so the main thing that you as a parent are concerned about is social development, right? So, and I will tell you that there are a lot of prerequisite skills that have to be in place for the social development to take place. It's not as easy as saying, hey, let's just put him with other kids and guide him a little bit and he will start to have normal social development. It's not that easy. It's not like that. There's a lot of things that are involved. For example, when you are talking about just social communication, that's one lesson in our program. What we're talking about is teaching the child to differentiate between approaching one other child as opposed to approaching a group of children. If you think about it, those behaviors are different, right? So the child has to learn both of those. And then once you've approached, let's say, a group or a single other child, how do you bring up a topic that is of interest to both of you? How do you read the facial expressions and gestures of the other children so that if they get bored, you know that it's, first of all, you understand that they are getting bored, you interpret their facial expressions correctly, and then you change the subject to something that is of interest to them. How do you take turns with them, allowing them to talk about things they're interested in? How do you listen to those things and ask appropriate questions? How do you repair the relationship if a child gets angry or walks away from boredom or whatever it is? There are tons of little steps that have to be taught to the child one by one before a social interaction becomes appropriate. And I just used one example. I mean, if the same child now wants to enter a group of adults, his entire interaction is going to be different than entering a group of children. So these are a lot of different subtle things. And I also tell you that a lot of times our kids might have appropriate speech, but their advanced language concepts like pragmatic language is not really there. So what I would recommend for you is not to worry so much about just, how do I fix or keep him active or all that. Get as many hours as you can. 20 to 24 or 25 is like the bottom of what I feel is effective, but it will make a big difference for him. Get those hours, and you're on skills now. So you've answered the questions. Start at the basic stuff that he's not good at, whether it doesn't have to be in the social curriculum. It'll maybe be in language curriculum or executive functioning or cognition or those areas. And start with the youngest level lessons and just pound away and go at it in 25, 24 hours. And keep doing that for a while, and you'll see that things will change and he'll start to put it together in a much more cohesive way.
Thank you for all of that. I got to tell you, Dr. Granpeesheh, this is one of the biggest like hurdles in my day, is that I sort of feel like it's like the FedEx arrow. Do people know about the FedEx arrow? When you look at the logo of FedEx, there is a hidden arrow embedded in the logo. And until you've seen it, you can look at the FedEx logo a million times and you don't see it. But once somebody points it out to you and shows you where the hidden arrow is, you can never unsee it again. You always see it. And I see that with parents, everybody, including myself, in the beginning goes, that just sounds like too many hours. 24 hours a week for a child, of ABA, and we clutch our pearls and our hair, and we're like, somebody, call in the troops, because it just seems crazy. But then once you see that that's what's effective and you really get it, you can never unsee it again. And I'm always trying to get people over that hurdle to the place where they can see it. And my new thing that I was thinking about yesterday is, because I tell people about the science, I tell them about our experience, I tell them about other people, and everybody's still like, I don't know. And now my thing is, I just want to challenge everybody. You don't have to believe it. I just want you to, so that you can quiet your mind and live with no regret. I'm challenging people, just try it for 3 months.
Yeah.
Just try it for 3 months. And at the end of 3 months, if you don't feel like your child doing a really intense program has been life-changing, then call me up and tell me I'm an idiot. I guarantee you nobody's going to call me. But if you don't do it, and you have a small child and you say, I just don't know if it's going to work, and it's such a commitment. If you don't try it, I guarantee you that later on you're going to wonder, could we have had more progress?
Yeah.
And I know what that is like. I sit and hold the hands of parents who say, I think we missed the boat. Mm-hmm. And I wish we could go back in time. So you don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe the science. You don't even have to believe Dr. Granpeesheh, who can tell you how many thousands of children she has seen. All the scientists say the same thing, that intensity it's crucial. But if you won't believe all that, I challenge you. I dare you to do it 3 months. I'm not talking about a week or 3 weeks. Get 3 months. And if you don't see that it's life-changing, please, I will pie myself on camera if somebody tells me that it wasn't life-changing. I pledge and I promise. I guarantee you'll find it life-changing.
Yeah.
Am I crazy, Dr. Granpeesheh?
No, you're 100% right, Shannon. And it's I kind of understand. Whenever you tell me that, it just kind of makes sense to me. I never really thought about it, because I kind of grew up with an intensive program, right? I mean, I was at the UCLA program where every child who came in would receive 40 hours. There was no such thing as less than 40 hours. Every single program was a 40-hour program. And I wish that we had kept it that way. In fact, like the original study, just so everybody knows, showed that if you took matched children, so children in two groups, and they were matched on IQ and capabilities and all of that, and if you gave one group 40 hours a week and the other group 10 hours a week, the group that was 40 hours a week, half of those children achieved normal intelligence and were placed in regular education. And of the group that received 10 hours, only one child, so that was 2% of the group, actually achieved that. And I have to say, it's super important. Intensity is the dosage of ABA. And It's like if someone tells you take 20 milligrams of something and you decide to take 2, it's not going to work, right? So it's just that simple. And I'm really happy this family is on skills, because you now have the ability to see how many things have to be caught up. It's not just social behavior. It's a lot of stuff that goes into social behavior. And I saw that the same mom has asked how to decrease the animal obsessions. And I want to say it's also not as simple as just saying, hey, you're not allowed to obsess on animals anymore. If you have a group of people, or if you can put together, and I know you're not in the US, but if you can put together a team of people, students, let's say, from high school or college, who can be trained. And of course, we've developed the training online through our other company called Institute for Behavioral Training. You can go on there and it's all video training, and these folks can learn the techniques of ABA. And if you can do that for 25 hours and you can use skills to guide you, you'll see that we don't just prevent obsessions, we redirect them to something that's a little bit more appropriate. For example, with your child who's obsessed with animals, depending on the age of the child, there might be certain activities that are okay that have to do with animals. Let's say if it's a young child, it could be, coloring animals or doing paint by number with animals. If it's an older child, it could be reading about animals. It could be a variety of things. In fact, over the course of time, you just want to kind of redirect this into an appropriate avenue. Maybe this child will be someone who will become a groomer of animals, a caretaker of animals, or something that is going to also give the child, joy in his occupation in the future. But my point, and then what you do is you restrict it so that the child is only engaging in that thing that he's obsessed with at a narrow period of time, as opposed to the entire day. So these are not things that I really recommend parents try to do on their own. I truly think that it would be important for you to connect with a behavior analyst, a BCBA, and someone who has a little bit of experience. And of course, even if you're international, there's a lot of companies that will give you guidance through a BCBA on Zoom, and will help you to kind of monitor things and set these programs into place. But you do need to get the child into a more intensive, and even 24 hours, honestly, is not intensive. It's kind of a medium level program, but if your child is high functioning and has some speech and no intellectual disability, then it might be the appropriate number to start with.
Okay, we got a lot of things we got to address here. First of all, Amanda, who always has my back, wrote it in and said, make sure when I'm telling people to do ABA to mention the hallmark, which is you got to do quality ABA. And yes, Amanda, you're absolutely right. It has to be quality ABA. And we talk a lot on this show about how to differentiate quality ABA from some of the things that are out there. But a lot of people are writing in now, Dr. Granpeesheh, with questions about skills and how to access ABA and the tools that you're talking about outside of the country. So do you want me to pause for a second and tell them this week's messages from skills, or do you want to talk about what skills and IBT are really quickly?
Sure. I mean, I'll introduce what they are, and then please feel free to give them more information. So many years ago, when my company CARD, Center for Autism, was growing and the need for autism was increasing, and I felt I couldn't keep up with, especially international need. We were getting a lot of requests from India and other places. I see a lot of families who are viewing today from India, but I decided that somehow I had to get all of the knowledge that we had out internationally. So we built a platform online, and this was called Skills. And Skills begins with an assessment. So when you get on Skills, and now it's its own company essentially, and you go on there as a parent, and you sign up, and you answer a lot of questions about your child. And the questions are, can your child do something? And you say yes or no. And when I say a lot, bear with us, because there really are a lot of questions. And it's important that you do that, because no two children are the same. And children have different strengths and weaknesses and areas of need and skills. After you answer all these questions, it kind of develops a profile of your child and identifies all the different areas that your child needs help with. And these are in language, social skills, play, cognitive skills, executive function, academic, adaptive, motor skills. And those are the 8 areas of functioning. And you will basically not only get an age level. So my child is 5 years old, but his language is at a 3-year level, or that sort of thing. But you will also get, what's very, very important, is sort of a list of lessons that need to be taught in order to catch the child up to their own age, right? So if my child is 5 and he's functioning more like a 2-year-old, then I have all these lessons in between 2 and 5 that I need to teach. So Skills will link you, the assessment answers will then link you to everything that you said your child cannot do. And each of those things then is written in a very, very comprehensive lesson format in ABA, and of what you need to teach. Now, there's many other aspects to Skills as well. It has a whole data tracking process, and it also has a section which is called the Behavior Intervention Planner, which will give you a plan for how to deal with challenging behaviors along the way. It has a lot of functions that'll be very helpful to you, but that's the curriculum, the program, the assessment. You can reassess. It will automatically, as your child masters certain things, it'll change the assessment and show you that the child is mastering more things. It'll show you also, it'll give you new lessons as your child ages, all of those types of things. But after we developed this, I realized, okay, so the parents now will have access to the content, the curriculum, the lessons, but how do I teach them ABA and the techniques? So then we developed another program called Institute for Behavioral Training, which is really an offshoot from CARD's training department. And it became its own company. And it is hundreds and hundreds of hours of online training for parents, for professionals, and for paraprofessionals, teachers, etc. And those are, we keep improving those, to be honest with you. Every single year we've modified, and they're very, very good videos that you can see and learn from. So with those together, I feel like you have the tools. You can learn the techniques, and you can do an assessment for your child, and then actually get a program going, not just for yourself, but for whoever is going to help you treat your child.
Thank you because those wonderful description of both of those things. But just to clarify, you can use these, they're online, you can use them anywhere in the world, because so many of you are writing in and saying, I'm in the UK, how would I start this? We have somebody writing in from the United Arab Emirates. So these are tools that you can use from anywhere and that you can start today. I want you to get your pens out because I'm going to give you a phone number and an email. And I'm going to tell you about stuff that's available to you for free today. So each week, Skills and IBT sends me an email and says, here's what we're giving to the world this week for free because of the pandemic. So this week, they're offering to parents and guardians a free IBT parent e-learning course. The title of it is Parent Tackling Autism as a Family. For the educator community, if we have teachers that are out there watching, or if you're a caregiver and you want to share this information with your child's teacher because it's free, They have an IBT educator e-learning module. It's Educator Useful Strategies, and that's available to teachers this week at no charge. They are also continuing at Skills in IBT to offer the RBT 2.0 course. That is for the registered behavior technician. It is the online learning portion of that. So it's the first step to becoming a registered behavior technician. It also is the first step to becoming a board certified autism technician. And that is normally like a $440 class that you take that's paced by you, that you take online. But they are offering that during the pandemic to caregivers on a case-by-case basis. It's about a 40-hour class. And if you want to do that, you need to reach out to them directly. Also, if you're interested in Skills or any of Skills products, they're offering that to you at a 10% discount. You do need to call them, or I will, if you're international, I'll give you my email. You can email me and I will forward it to them. So the phone number is 877-975-4559. Again, for any of the free things or discount that I was talking about, you do need to call 877-975-4559. And if you are international, as so many of you are today, you can email me and I will forward your email. It's s.penrod@autism-live.com. And I think Traven's going to put that up on the screen. But for those of you who are listening in podcast in the future, S as in Shannon, .Penrod, which is P as in Peter, E as in egg, N as in Nancy, R as in robot, O as in Oscar, D as in dog, at autism. I love that I don't have to spell that for any of you. You all know how to spell that. So autism and then hyphen, that's the dash in the middle, live, L-I-V as in Victor, E.com. So write to me if you're international and I will forward your email over to the Skills folks. It's a great tool, an amazing tool. And it answers a lot of the questions that some of you have been writing in about what can I do? I will tell you that I remember the day that I met Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh because it was the day that she was unveiling Skills to some people in the autism community. And what I heard her say on that day made me shake. I'm going to cry. I shook for hours because I was so excited, because she said, and I already knew it, my child had had the benefit of that curriculum that is in Skills. And she said, we have the answers. We need to share it with the world. And everyone can't be here. We need to share it with the world. And all of that is what's packed into Skills and IBT. And, your legacy is so large, Dr. Granpeesheh, but I will never forget you saying that. Not ever. I think it was one of the most pivotal moments in my life. And I think I've told you before, I left the building, drove about 2 doors down and had to pull into the parking lot because I couldn't drive. And I called my husband and I said, I've seen the future and I would follow that woman into a burning building because I would know she was going in for a good reason. So anyway, I get emotional. But part of why I'm emotional is because a mom has written in and her story is mine, but she didn't have the benefit of what I had. And so my heart is bleeding for her. She says, good day to you. Oh, my computer just timed out. Good day to you. My son was born with an APGAR score of 910. He was a normal child until 3 years old. All of a sudden, he has developed unusual behaviors like not sleeping, no appetite, hyperactive. All at the same time, slowly, he started to lose his speech. We were clueless. Later, he was diagnosed with autism with borderline, but within a year, he became acutely affected. That period, we put him in ABA 2.5 hours a week, an OT 2.5 hours a week for 3 years. He has developed a few behaviors in terms of OT, but his language skills, which we had up until 3 years, has been totally lost. At present, he is 9. He is nonverbal. Also with the pandemic, he could not get therapy for the past 9 months. How can parents intervene and develop the skills at home?
Yeah. So first, Shannon, can you hear me okay? Because I was
Yep.
getting some. You're okay. Okay.
Yep. Can hear you great.
Okay, great. So it breaks my heart to hear that, but let's do everything we can right now.
Yep.
Whenever I hear that a child has lost skills, I always think that some form of environmental factor caused that, because when you have a loss of skills, it's sort of a sudden event type thing. And you have to kind of look back. And a lot of times when that is occurring around age 3 or so, it's some form of overload, and this is one of the reasons that a lot of parents believe that their child was injured by vaccines, as an example, because there's overload happening in the child's. A lot of our kids are very sensitive, and they're not detoxifying as fast as everyone else. And so basically, what happens is whether it's a vaccine or some other type of environmental factor, their immune system is affected and they are not able to detoxify as rapidly as they need to from environmental toxins. And then they lose skills, and then unfortunately, if we can't identify what is the factor that is causing toxicity, then over a course of time the child doesn't redevelop those skills, and then it becomes very difficult as they age to redevelop those skills. But at this point, and I very much appreciate that you are not giving up, and that you are, still trying at the age of 9. And what I would do is I would not I would at this point, I would ask you to, I guess, envision a new set of goals. These are not going to be the same goals that you might have envisioned at age 3, but they're going to be goals that are very important for him and that will help him and that he will be able to accomplish. So what becomes very important is for him to be able to communicate. He's nonverbal, so let's not worry about whether or not he communicates verbally. Let's just worry about making sure he can communicate. Because it's important, and I always tell this to parents who have older kids who are still not communicating, that I cannot even imagine how sweet those children are, how kind and patient and lovely they are if they're not getting aggressive. Because I can tell you that if I was not able to communicate, I would probably get pretty frustrated and pretty angry. So, and maybe your child is a little bit frustrated, but either way, we do need to figure out ways that will work for him, that he can communicate. And what we usually do, every child is a little bit different, but what we usually do is we will begin with icons, iconic or picture type of communication. So picture exchange communication system, PECS, is very, very effective if it is used correctly and used consistently. Basically, PECS is a program where there are little figures, icons for everything that you would want to communicate or request. And you start with a very, very basic, it has levels. So it starts with a very, very basic level of just handing a picture to you when he wants something. So it's a representation of the item he wants. And then it becomes more longer sentences like I want as opposed to it is. And it's an expansion on communication, but it is all nonverbal. There are children who are able and interested in learning letters and keyboarding. And if they have any interest, or even children who have a good visual memory, we will next go to communicating via typing. So, and that is a very, very big step, because PECS is fantastic, and you can have a PECS board where the child will pull off an icon and give it to you. You can have a PECS book that even goes with the child wherever they go, but it is still not, it is still a little bit more difficult than actually being able to type. Because if you are able to write what you want and what you see and how you feel and describe things that are going on and all that sort of stuff, you can now, obviously, you'll learn on a keyboard, then you'll transfer to an iPad. You can go to an augmentative device that will actually say what you typed, or you could just use your phone and type things in. One of my kids, became so express. He's completely nonverbal still, but became so expressive using his phone that he would nonstop basically tell everyone what to do. No, I don't want to go there. I want to go to Toys R Us right now. And he would type this so rapidly, and his parent, like, he would not stop communicating. It was just that he couldn't vocalize it. So bottom line is, there are lots of choices in terms of how to communicate. It does not have to be verbal. In fact, a lot of parents choose to go to sign language. That might be a way as well. Sign is a little bit harder than these visual systems that I mentioned, but any and all of these are fantastic because the child needs to be able to communicate. And if I were you at age 9, I would really be focusing on that. Now, you can also, if you still feel that your child has verbal or vocal sounds that they're making, you can also pair vocalizations with the iconic language or communication. So I give you a picture of juice, and I also say juice when I want it, as an example. But these are things that are very subtle decisions that have to be made. And, my recommendation really is, in where you are, you might be able to easily find folks who are experts in augmentative devices and communicating using an augmentative device. Or you might be able to have access to a BCBA. And there, all over the world, there are now BCBAs. And the way that you find them is that you go on the Behavior Analysis Certification Board website. You just put that in, Behavior Analysis Certification Board. Google that. It's the BACB.org, right? And it will pop up. And on there, you will see that there's a way to look for find certificates, it says. And then you'll go in and you will put in your country, your state, wherever you are, and it'll list all the folks who are a board certified behavior analyst, BCBA, in your area. And it has their information. And you shoot those people an email and you say, I really need your help. I want to set up an ABA program, or I need advice for my child, and just the kind of stuff you just wrote to me. And hopefully you'll be able to get some help in terms of kind of guidance over your overall program.
And I was trying to find, because Sue Cho, who comes and talks with us sometimes on the show about teaching that augmentative and assisted language. A lot of people recommend Proloquo. Sue recommends a different program, which I believe is called Touch Chat. I was trying to find it in my texts and I can't find it. I will ask her though and let you guys know, but I believe it's called Touch Chat. But I really want to address, because mom or dad, I don't know whether it's mom or dad, wrote back in and said that he does have some vocal skills, that he can speak simple words, but rarely. And I just want to make sure, because a lot of times people feel like, well, it's this hardcore thing. If my child can speak at all, then we don't do assisted and augmentative devices. And correct me if I'm wrong, that it really kind of depends on what you've tried before and what age. But By 9, we really want to give them as much functional communication as possible. Even if they can speak some words, we're not going to harm that by giving them more communication, are we?
No, we're not at all. And I just saw a couple of more chats from this parent who, and they're saying that he does speak simple words, but rarely. And that's a good thing. That's very good news, and it just excites me more. I really encourage you to get a BCBA on board and to start working with him, because it's an easy step going from single words to sentences. It is an easy and fun process expanding his library of words. And as Shannon said, it doesn't hurt. Think of it as just a visual cue. You can continue to honor the words that he currently says. And in fact, sometimes, because our kids are much more visual, their language actually increases, their vocal language increases when they have apex or any kind of visual system paired with it, because they start to understand kind of what is happening. But the key to increasing, whether it's vocal or non-vocal communication, is to make sure that the child understands that they will get what they want when they communicate it, and they won't when they don't communicate it. So if your child, for instance, says a few words, I assume those are what we call mans. Mans are when they request something. So it's something that the child wants. And so if your child says, like, let's say water, you give water to the child when they say it. You do not when they don't say it. It sounds very difficult when you're a parent, but it isn't, because you can model and prompt the child to ask for water every time by saying water. So as I explained that, you might be able to see why it's easier to use iconic or non-vocal types of communication, because sometimes for our children, it's just very, very difficult to produce words because they have apraxia. Their tongue is not able to move as fast as ours does when we produce words. They don't know how to pair enough air exertion with sound and so on. So nonverbal or non-vocal communication can often be easier, faster, and it can still pair with the vocal, and it can actually help expedite the vocal expression as well.
There we go. We have a bunch of questions that I want to try to get to, but I want to start with, they want to know, is skills living, which we're going to have to explain what skills living is, more comprehensive than AFLS, and I don't know what AFLS is.
I also don't know what AFLS is, but skills living, so we have two versions of skills. The first version is skills developing, and that is for younger children. It starts at birth, and it goes all the way to, I believe, mental age 8. Now, it's important to consider that it's mental age 8, because a lot of our children, chronological age, their normal age can be 14, 15, but they're functioning at an 8-year-old level in those areas. So, and then what we realized is that we need to go past that, because a lot of children or adults and their families around the world are also in need of skills. So then we worked on and produced a new protocol called Skills Living. And Skills Living is actually turned out to be larger, more comprehensive than Skills Developing. And because we developed it later, the format, the platform is more user-friendly, and I like it a lot more, actually. And it's very, very, very broad. It sounds like AFLS is an assessment. Skills Living is not just an assessment, and it's not just functional living skills. It's, my God, just go on there and take a look at it. It's huge. It's everything from, daily living skills to communication, social communication, vocational skills, leisure skills. I mean, there's tons and tons of stuff in there. And it is an assessment, but it links to lessons, just like skills does. So once you've assessed what your child or adult child needs, it links to how to teach that and what are the steps to teach that. So I love skills living. I've always said to Shannon that, I wish that I was younger and that I had more energy to put into developing more lessons and programs and activities for our teens and adults. Right now, I'm trying to work on slight modifications to the CARD program, Center for Autism, so that they actually do address more the needs of adolescents and adults. But yeah, I really recommend Skills Living. It's wonderful.
Wonderful. They want to know, are there any apps that can help autistic children to talk? We've got a good one to talk about, right? Camp Discovery.
Yeah, so Camp Discovery is it's not it doesn't promote expressive language. It will, though, teach a lot of the basics of language. So Camp Discovery is when we started to build a lot of our lessons on skills, and then we're talking thousands and thousands of lessons, right? We realized that maybe there's a way that we can speed things up, because a lot of our kids, and maybe your kids, you will feel, they're sitting in the car and they're playing on a computer game, or at night there's no therapist with the child and the child is just playing on a computer game and playing on their iPad or something like that. So we decided to take the first 50 lessons and turn them into games. And that's what we did. And that is what Camp Discovery is. It's games that will teach your child exactly based on ABA. Like, it is the exact format of a discrete trial training protocol. And it will teach the basic first 50 lessons. So there's things like, basic labels and verbs, actions, colors and numbers and prepositions and pronouns and stuff. But after all, it is a computer program, so it's receptive. So it's sort of like, where touch the object that is underneath the whatever. So it teaches you in a receptive way. So it doesn't, the child is not vocalizing, but they are definitely identifying. So yeah, it's a great place to start. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are other apps or games out there for expressive use of language as well for autism. There's a lot of really good apps now, so it's worth looking into.
I gotta say that I love when you pair the lessons that are in skills. There used to be this app that was really popular, and then all of our phones decided it was so cool that they made it possible on every phone to do it. It's called Filters. And what it was before was just this app where it was this cartoon cat, and you pushed a button and you said something, and then the cat would say it back. And kids loved it, and they would do vocal production and make noises, and you could shape language because they loved looking at the cat saying what they said. Now they have all those filters, and you want to get a child making noises and shape it into language, put filters on your phone and have them see it. I don't know if you saw, it's viral today. We're doing court yesterday somewhere.
Yesterday, yeah.
The
It's
cat.
so funny.
Oh my gosh, the lawyer who got his filter stuck on the cat. It's hilarious. It's a whole big "I'm not a cat" meme today. But it's so reinforcing that the kids want to participate and want to make sounds to see their face in the thing, say the sound. And it all comes down to reinforcement, right? If it's fun enough, we want to try to work through. Love that. Okay, somebody wants to know, great resource in South Africa. My question is, do you have someone accessible here in South Africa that we can talk to work with a child with autism? And yes, you do.
Makes me very happy to introduce you to our wonderful, wonderful affiliate in South Africa. And that is the Star Academy. and they are in there's in Joburg and in Pretoria, and I believe also in I want to say they have other
Aren't they in
locations. Durban as well, yeah. And they are some of the best people I've ever met in my life, the founders of this organization, Ilana and Martin Gershowitz, and I highly recommend that you get in touch with them. In fact, if you go on the CARD website, Center for Autism and Related Disorders, there is a link to them. They are our most active affiliate, and they have an outstanding program. We trained a lot of their folks. They follow the CARD curriculum. They use skills. They use Institute for Behavior Training. They are, I always say they are a very fantastic version of what we do here at CARD. And they have expanded as well. And they are not just in South Africa, but they are overseeing and supporting others in other African countries as well. I believe they are involved with Ghana and Zimbabwe and many other countries where they are providing support. Almost all of their behavior technicians are board certified autism technicians, BCATs. So they're very high quality. I really recommend them. Ilana, I don't have her book here, but I think last year she published a book that was also very good. Ilana is a mom of 2 children on the spectrum, and her first child, I would say probably she experienced some of the most severe symptoms of autism with him. And so she really has a deep understanding of all the medical aspects involved with children who are severely affected. She's fantastic. And then at the same time, her third child was a high functioning, and she was so observant that she noticed signs of autism in him when he was less than 2 years old. So we began intervention with him very early on, and he has recovered since. So she basically has both the entire spectrum she has experienced. And so she's an incredible resource, and I'm glad that I am able to refer you to her and to the Star Academy.
And she has a new podcast that's out. In fact, I was on her podcast next week, and Traven, we need to make that the link to that available to everybody. Her podcast is called Autism, What Now? And boy, we said some nice things about you behind your back, Dr. Granpeesheh, because both of us are like your hugest fans. Like we would mud wrestle to be the person crowned your hugest fan. But we I think we'd share it too. So we'll get that link on our Facebook page for you guys to listen to her podcast, because she's a dynamo, man. She's incredible. We've only got 30 seconds here, but somebody wants to know, so is skills living, can that be used for a 4-year-old as well? And we want to be really clear.
So skills developing, there are 2 skills. Skills developing is for the younger children, and skills living is for the older children. And the reason is that we've actually age normed those skills. So in other words, you don't really want to be teaching a 4-year-old things that are appropriate for an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And so
you don't need to teach them how to balance their checkbook.
Exactly. So skills developing is the one that you want for a 4-year-old.
Okay, we are officially out of time, but Dr. Granpeesheh, I want to thank you so much for being here, and I'm sorry that we didn't get to more of the questions. You guys keep them coming in. I do want to say that tomorrow on the show, we have Scott Badesch, who is the former president of Autism Society of America, and he's going to be here with a new app that is out of Israel that had a lot of research around it, that it's an app that helps your child to learn emotions, to recognize facial expressions on other people, recognize their own emotions, regulate their emotions. It's called Emotiplay, and we're really excited to talk with them tomorrow. And on Friday, Vince Redmond is here, licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's going to be talking with us about levels of friendship and boundaries, and for our kiddos, how we teach them, but how we do that for ourselves, how we have boundaries and keep friends, but put them in different categories so that we don't get hurt and don't have expectations and that aren't realistic for certain levels of friends. So we're going to be talking about all of that on Friday during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. So Dr. Granpeesheh, again, thank you so much for being here. We're going to be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live back from the other place in my house, and I'm happier. Thrilled to be here with you guys this morning on this Thursday morning. This is the February 11th, 2021. Can anybody believe? And I'm wearing my red all this week because we're celebrating Valentine's Day this weekend, and I'm sending all of you big hugs and love. I know that everybody thinks of Valentine's Day as being this big romantic holiday, and I say pshaw to that. It's about self-love and about loving everybody that we care about. It doesn't need to be about romantic love. So whether you have a romantic squeeze to squeeze, or you're squeezing yourself, or you're squeezing your kiddos, I think it's about love and self-love first. Because what is it that RuPaul always says? If you can't love yourself, can't love nobody else, right? Something like that. I'm misquoting RuPaul. So there we go. Thrilled to be here with you. We're going to be live for the next hour. We've got some great guests for you. I'm really excited about the topic today and everything that we're going to be talking about, but that's a little bit later on. But we do want you to know that this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, your concerns. This is a safe space in which to put out whatever you got going on today. We are live right now on many different platforms. The big four, as I like to refer to them, we're live right now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope. And on any of those platforms, if you would like to interact with us, all you have to do is type in on that platform and it'll show up here. I don't have to go aggregate it anymore. We absolutely love that and want to thank Restream for making that possible for us. But we are also live on several other platforms. We're welcoming all of you. We've so enjoyed the interaction with those of you on Vaughn Live and on many other sites this week. It's been super fun having you guys with us, and we hope that you'll continue to write in and be with us. Our mission here is to provide information and inspiration to the autism community. And when I say autism community, I'm talking about the larger autism community. I know a lot of times people go, who is this show for? And it's a great question. It's a valid question. So this show, we always say it's for the larger autism community. That starts with all individuals who are on the autism spectrum. Of course, they are the beating heart of our community. And obviously they are our entire reason why. We welcome you if you are a member of that community. We want to hear your voice. We want for you to have a place to speak up in whatever platform, whatever way is convenient for you to communicate your thoughts and needs, right? It doesn't have to be vocal. We've had many people on the show that is not their mode of communication. But we also welcome and include in that community everyone who loves those individuals, because we know that together, with all of us together, that we have a large voice and we can accomplish more, and that we have needs in this community. And that if we can support the person who is supporting the person, we will get there faster. That is my belief anyway. So whether you are a parent, teacher, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, significant other of any kind, or someone who just has a friend that you love dearly on the autism spectrum, then we welcome you to this community, and we will agree that we will not agree on everything, right? That would be impossible. How could such a huge, beautiful, diverse group of people agree on everything? There's no way that we could, but that's okay. We can listen to each other, and we can put out information and be respectful of each other's needs, wants, and desires, and hopefully help to propel the cause of having individuals who are on the autism spectrum have the resources and the rights and the dignity that should always have been afforded to them and should be afforded to them today. So that's what we're about here. And We welcome anybody who brings a voice to that and who wants to see positive things happen for individuals who are on the autism spectrum. Now, we do welcome experts on this show all the time. It's very important to me that we have experts available to you that you can ask questions. By the way, I didn't mention that if you want to watch our show in podcast, we are on all of the major podcasting platforms, and we are a free download, whether it's iTunes, Apple Music, Google Music, Spotify, Deezer, Ghana, the list goes on. So look for us on your podcasting platforms. If you don't see us there for some reason, please alert us to that, because we want to be where you can find us. We just want to be there for you for free. That's been a very important thing for me over the last 10 years, is to make sure that this information is available to you wherever you need it, whenever you need it, at no cost to you. Woohoo to that, right? And as I was saying, we have experts who are on the show. I'm not one of them. And I always like to remind you that while I have a very strident voice and I have many opinions, and I like to say that they're kind of informed opinions, because I've been hosting shows about autism in a journalistic way for well over a decade. So maybe I have an informed opinion, but I think that's a little, a matter of point of view, right? But I'm not an expert. And I just always want to remind you of that. My role here is that I want to connect you to the things that you want to be connected to. Why? Because when my son was 2.5, he was diagnosed with autism, and I didn't know what to do, where to go, who to talk to, who to trust. And I felt overwhelmed. And early on, I said, why isn't there a place where I can go, where I can feel like I can ask a question and that I won't be ridiculed for asking the question? And I wanted to be available like at 2 a.m, because that's the only time I had available. So that's who I am. And I want to be your cheerleader. I want to support you, whoever you are in this community. I want to support you to be able to do the things that you want to be able to do, and to give you the inspiration to find it if it isn't there, or create it if it isn't there, right? So that's who I am. Don't confuse me as one of the experts, though. Okay, deal. Now, on Thursdays, we like to start the show with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are those experts talking about? What does it mean? How do we get our heads wrapped around this? Is it even useful? And I guarantee you, if it's a jargon term that we do here on the show, it's because I think it's really useful and it's going to save you time and money. For me, that's the litmus test. There are some jargon terms. The funny thing is that more and more people, somebody wrote in the other day and said, thank you, I use these to study to get my BCBA. And I'm like, that is crazy, but crazy good. But now we have all these BCBA and BCBA programs writing in and saying, hey, can you cover this jargon term? And sometimes it's something that would only be used in a room where, the psychologists are talking. So I really don't go there. Because I think these are terms that we should all know to be able to help ourselves, help our students, help our kiddos, right? These are terms that we're going to hear and are useful if we will take the time to learn them. So I'm sorry, BCBAs, but we're not running a BCBA study program here, although we love it when you do use us to study. It's high irony. In any case, here's a term that you're going to hear over and over and over again, and it's very useful to know what this means. So first, we give you the actual definition. Then, whenever possible, I make fun of the actual definition, guilty as charged, because really, other than that, there's not much you can do with it, right? And then we move on to a working definition, which sometimes makes the experts break out into hives. That's just an added bonus. I love the experts. I don't mean to make it sound like I don't love them, but they make us all like when they use the jargon. So I sort of enjoy it when we do that back to them a little bit. And then I try to give it to you in context so that you gain a better understanding of it. But please be gentle with yourself. Don't get frustrated. If you don't get it right now, that's okay, because you will get it after a couple of times hearing it and a couple of times seeing it. At some point, you have that magical moment where you go, oh, I get it. I get what they're talking about there. So the other day, we did expressive language, and we promised that we would do receptive language. It's very hard to do one without the other. So we did talk about it a little bit the other day, but Receptive language is our jargon of the day. Traven, let's go ahead and take a look at what our actual definition is. Let's see what we can make fun of. Receptive language, the process of attending to communication, spoken or non-vocal, comprehending the communication, and being able to react appropriately within a specified time parameter, even when what is being conveyed contains multiple facets. Like, how convoluted could you get this to be? Now, the great thing about this definition is that it's a little highbrow, but we kind of understand what they're getting at here, although there are parts of it, it's like, wait a second, what you're referring to here. How, specified time parameter, what you talking about, Willis? So let's move on to our working definition, and let's see if we can't hone in on this so that we can really understand what they were talking about there. So receptive language is the child or the individual's ability to understand what is being said to them. But I want to refer back to some of the things in the actual definition, because sometimes we get a little too black and white about this, right? Well, if I say stop and the child knows to stop, then their receptive language is great. But let's remember that language and communication isn't just vocal. I think the world likes to paint it as if, speaking is everything, but we know B.F. Skinner told us that a much more than half of communication that we receive is not vocal. That I was saying the other day that, as a teacher, former teacher here, when I would like pull my glasses down and do this to a student, then that was one way of saying stop, right? And it was less disruptive because I didn't, everybody's writing on their thing. And if I go stop, then everybody's head comes up, right? But a well-placed, looking down my nose in the glasses with one eyebrow arched at a student is another way of going, I see you, knock it off, right? We also can point to somebody, and that is communication too. And I think we all have different, I know we all have different levels of receptive language, right? But it's our ability to take in information. This is all going to feed very well in with our guests today. Wait till you see. I know that for me, hand gestures, I don't really understand them very well. I always say that I want to go take a class with SWAT to understand all the little hand gestures that they do when they're like, on TV shows saying, two people go around this. I don't understand it at all. And you would think, well, Shannon, really, how much of that do you need to understand? But go to Disneyland and try to park in the parking lot and not understand hand gestures. I'm always holding up the line because I have to roll down the window and go, what is it you want me to do? I don't understand what this is, right? Because I don't. And, I'm a fairly communicative individual on this planet, but for whatever reason, that is not my strong suit. And I think we all have, when we look at, and again, reminder that we talked about expressive language. So expressive language is what goes this way. It's my ability to communicate, not just vocally, but my ability to communicate using my whole body and my voice in my case, not in everybody's case, right? And receptive is my ability to take in all of the ways that someone expresses themselves. And our expressive language and our receptive language are not equal and even. Some people are stronger in expressive, some people are stronger in receptive. Some people are strong at some aspects of expressive language, but not others. Like I'm very good at high scores in expressive language, but ending a conversation, which is also expressive, not my strong suit. It's why Traven has to tell me, Shannon, we're 12 minutes past when you were supposed to end the show because I don't know how to end. I'm better and I can get better. But on the receptive side, being able to understand all ways that somebody is communicating, you might be able to hear and interpret what somebody's being able to say, but do you understand body language? Oh, whole other aspect of this, right? Do you understand when somebody is looking at you and they've got a look on their face that's, they're a little disappointed with you? Do you have the ability to read what is on someone's face and interpret that? Because first of all, you have to see the configuration and understand, oh, I've seen that face before. That's when somebody is disappointed. or that's when somebody's happy, or that's when somebody who's sad. So wait till you see how we're going to put this all together with our guest today. Receptive language, it's really important. If you don't, there's so many ways that if you don't have enough receptive skills, that things can be misinterpreted and we can find ourselves dealing with problems that we wouldn't otherwise have to deal with. So when you're in a school setting, they will always talk about the students' receptive and expressive language and which one is stronger. As a teacher, I love knowing that. That's such good information. And, you know, I used to go to IEP meetings, and I lament now that they didn't often enough talk about this, because as a teacher, if you tell me this person's expressive language is higher than their receptive, I know how to teach to that. I know exactly what I need to do to be able to make that student be able to learn the information. If you tell me the opposite, the receptive is higher than their expressive, I'm going to go at it a different way, but I want to arrive in the same place. I want to teach my student. So knowing these things, super uber helpful. Don't be reticent to get these tests done in the right context. Don't pull them out of math class to do it. But to have these studies done to test their expressive and receptive language, and then to know what the results are and teach based on the results. You always want to teach to a strength and shore up the weakness. You don't ignore the weakness, but you don't keep teaching somebody to their weakness and go, I don't know why they're not getting it. That's not a way to teach. All right, so I love receptive language. So today on the show, we're very excited. We've been talking about doing this for a while, but we're finally here. We are welcoming two fabulous guests. We have David Zeldin, who is with us, and Scott Badesch, who are with us. And these are two amazing gentlemen. I will tell you that I'm having trouble with all of my files, so I'm speaking completely off the cuff here. But Scott, I have known for a very long time. Scott is the former president of the Autism Society of America. He's been on the show before and has had a long, illustrious career in the field of autism, helping families, certainly in the United States, but around the world, to find and access services. So we welcome Scott back to the show. And I should say that this is Scott's idea of retirement now. We knew Scott wasn't going.
Hey, I don't have a tie on. Look at, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, bless you. And all I can say is bless your wife, because we all knew, Scott, that you weren't going to be able to retire and go away, because you can't. How could you do that? That's just not a possibility for you. But then we're also welcoming David Zeldin here to talk with us. And David, I apologize because you sent me beautiful information about you and I can't pull it up on my computer and I don't know why. So I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your background, and then we're going to talk about this new hot fabulous thing that you are working on, Emotiplay, that is available to our viewers. So David, forgive me and tell us a little bit about your background. I can't hear you though, David. Do you have your sound on? Can you unmute yourself? Well, while he is paused for a second, because David, we aren't able to hear you. And Traven, any help that you can give David to figure out why we can't hear him. Scott, I want you to wax poetic a little bit about David, because he's an amazing guy. Tell us a little bit about David.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you what my favorite sound is: a belly laugh from a baby who's crying.
Right.
You know, when you thought that, and so it's great to see you again. And as I said, I'm loving retirement, but my wife doesn't love me being around the house from 9 to 5. So I've gotten involved in things. But David is with a company called Emotiplay, which is.
And of course, now he's frozen. This is not, it's like, what is wrong with the universe? My computer's not working, Scott's frozen, and David can't be heard. This is what we call live programming. So our host is talking to David to see if we can get his, okay, I don't know what's going on. So I'm going to talk a little bit of, oh, now we have Scott back.
Okay.
Scott, you froze. Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right. Tell us about Emotiplay.
Emotiplay. David, are you on now?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So David.
Oh, it's exciting.
David with Emotiplay, and each one of their sales and management people, and he and I've developed a friendship over the last year. And I suggested he let more people know about this great product. So I said, this is great. And Shannon, before I go, one of the benefits of retirement is I get to watch your show regularly, and I want to tell you, it's nice to have the time, but you've taught me a lot, and your guests have taught me a lot. But it's just your way of making me think things. Like even this question of what's your favorite laugh? What's your sound? That's such a wonderful thing. Tonight at dinner, I'm gonna ask my wife that. But it's really the service you're providing is really, I always knew it, but now I'm benefiting. But thank you. So I'll leave with
Well,
that.
that's very sweet.
Well,
and thank you, Scott. And don't go too far because you helped us to connect. So David, I'm so glad that we can hear from you now. Tell us first a little bit about you, David, and then we want to talk about Compedia and Emotiplay.
You got it. Okay, so first of all, glad that you can hear me. And before I even talk about myself, I do have to, answer your question about my favorite sound, because when you asked it, I'm thinking, people ask, what's your favorite color? It's not usually a question that you get. So I'd have to go with Mariah Carey, when she hits those high notes when she was in her prime. Those are my, that'll always, I don't know, that really, that works.
I get you. All right. I love it. I love it. Okay. But now, David, we're scintillating, we're simmering with anticipation. Tell us a little bit about you.
So I am in sales and marketing for about 25, 30 years in Israel. I came here about 30 years ago and did an MBA, and have ever since been in the tech arena here, which has really blossomed and become a really central part of our economy over the past 20, 30 years. And I am now with a company called Emotiplay, which is part of Compedia. Compedia is a company that's been in ed tech for over 30 years, and they established themselves as coming out with a lot of actually these floppy disks, if you guys remember those. They did floppy disks and diskettes and CD-ROMs with cute, adorable characters like Casper the Friendly Ghost, Bob the Builder, and really made a lot of waves in the educational technology sector. Today, obviously, we're not doing CD-ROMs, and we're not doing any of that, and we've moved into everything is online and SaaS-based and cloud-based. And what we're going to talk about today is Emotiplay, which is a really revolutionary approach that is research-based, and a lot of very big leaders in the field were behind this. And what it's doing is it's really helping kids on the spectrum learn about emotions in a way that was never done before, because we are using and taking advantage of all the media. We're dealing with not just photos, but also video. And you talked about sound, so we talk about tone and pitch, and really in every possible way, going in every possible direction, teach the kids how to identify and how to learn. So here you actually see a picture. The idea is, of course, not to put the child in front of the computer by themselves and just have them go through it and get too immersed in the actual program. But it's actually being used with therapists, with parents, with siblings, with friends, and the idea is to really work as a team to learn about emotions, to understand facial expressions, to understand body language, to understand different tones, and to be able to express themselves, and also talking about actually what they're feeling inside of themselves and being able to express it. We use cute characters to do this, but I do want to emphasize that the actual faces and when we're actually teaching about the emotions, those are real. They're always going to be real people, real faces, real voices, not the cartoon type of things are used to talk about it. But when we give examples, it's always going to be with the real thing.
Wonderful. And so we have a clip that, as long as Traven is ready to do it, I think it'd be great if we showed the clip that tells a little bit about Emotiplay, and then we'll come back and talk about how you guys got involved in this space, and we'll delve in a little bit. Does that sound good? Okay, so Traven, roll tape, please.
Emotiplay develops advanced technologies for children with autism spectrum disorders and related conditions.
Hello, hello. I'm delighted to see you.
Welcome to Emoteam. Emoteam is a unique program to help autistic children aged 4 to 11 recognize and understand emotions. The program is designed for the child to work with an adult mediator such as a parent, teacher, or therapist. Or alternatively, the child can work with a group of his peers. The program core content was developed in collaboration with an international team of top experts from leading universities. Emoteam is a structured program based on the latest scientific evidence. It includes the following elements: dozens of video lessons, practice activities, integrative activities, hands-on social interaction tasks, learning by doing, interactive quizzes and tests, tools to support team learning. The program's core content has been tested and validated in clinical trials by researchers in several countries.
How wonderful. See you later.
Okay, wonderful. So now we know a little bit more about it. But so I guess obviously you explained that Compedia is a place that has been dealing with education, but I guess I want to know what spurred them to specifically want to get into this space, David. Why working with individuals with autism, and why work on emotion?
So what happened was one of the actually it was one of the employees there, and one of their kids was diagnosed with autism, and they were actually looking for something to teach their kid about emotions and to work with them, and they realized very quickly that there was really nothing really out there that they were able to get their hands on that was dealing in a really comprehensive way. So they turned to one of the professors in Israel, and a consortium was actually formed. So there's a few different universities: Cambridge in the UK, Bar Ilan in Israel, Karolinska in Sweden. Autism Europe ended up also getting involved, and Compedia was the entity that was putting it all together and actually making the actual program. So the research was done the video just said, in 3 different countries. And but the impetus to this was personal. At the end of the day, it was something that the company started to look into, and other people in the company got involved, obviously. And that's how we got the spin-off of Emotiplay. That's how it was born.
Wonderful. And Scott, you can attest to the fact that this is an area where parents of individuals on the autism spectrum have long said this is an issue, right? Having our children recognize emotion in other people, in themselves, because if they don't have that, I think that most parents will say, when you talk to them about what do you need, they'll talk about how they want their child to self-regulate. But self-regulation doesn't come unless you understand what it is to begin with, right? Talk a little bit about your experience with this and parents needing something like this.
Well, and just on a very personal basis, I think, as you know, and others who've heard me speak, my oldest son, who just turns 30, I'm trying to think, 35 next week, 34, I'm sorry. He's on the spectrum. And like any parent of a child with autism or not, it hurts you when your kid has something to say that they can't say. I mean, and this is not so much a nonverbal, but it's just, when a little baby's sick and they can't tell you what hurts, it really bothers you, but it's also bothering the person. What I saw in my career, and I see it with my son, and I see it with a lot of people, is that that understanding their emotions and the way to describe if they're angry, if they're sad, if they're hurting, if they're confused, is often difficult. And as you said, reading other people's faces, so that if I was mad, it was my son picking that up. If my son interacted with a policeman, could he read the body language and realize, okay, this is something I need to be related to. So I always wondered in my career, how do you teach kids emotions? I did it with my son. I mean, we had to spend time and, and like any person, there'd be meltdowns when the frustration got to such a level. But once he was either able to point or verbally tell us or even write something, that he was sad. And then when we got into why are you sad, but then when David and the people from Emotiplay and I started talking, I said, this would be wonderful. I wish I had this from when my son was young. I even think, even though it's aimed toward kids up to 8 years old, I think, a lot of people, I mean, it's, there's a lot of us who may not pick up emotions as easy. But what I've seen with this program is it's a good way for a parent or a therapist or a teacher to gain the trust of a child and say, look, I'm a safe person. You could tell me you're scared. You could tell me you're worried. You could tell me you're not feeling good. But emotions, it's I mean, it's emotions could be sometimes if a kid doesn't let their emotions know, it could get risky. So what's good about this is it helps the kid self-learn in a way that they would not learn had they didn't have the device. Last thing I would just say is that, each of us as a parent, our kids, we could control how much our kids interact with people, but the reality is you don't know who they go to school, they're interacting with people, the bus driver, they're interacting, kids on the bus, how they could say, an example, if there's a bully on the bus and they're afraid, how do they share to the parent or this teacher or the therapist or anyone that they're afraid? And what this does is it helps the kid understand. There's a case that maybe I'm not trying to steal thunder, David, of someone who was using it, and the kid would go to the train station every day. A train, it's in Europe, and he just liked the train stations. Well, I might get this wrong, David. I do correct me. Someone at the train station thought this was what's this kid doing, and kind of made it look like he shouldn't be here. Well, he didn't know how to deal with it. We used emotion thing, and he kind of said, okay, I know how to deal with it. Someone may understand, why is this kid always at the train station sitting there? He may be looking at his iPad or whatever, but he was able to explain to his mom and his dad and the therapist in this case that I love going to the train station, but I get an emotional thing by the way this woman keeps looking at me. She must be working there or something. I got to deal with that. Well, Emotiplay taught the child how to deal with it, so that he was able to go to the train station, which was a safe place for him to enjoy it. So the results are great. It was developed by some leading experts that are well known internationally. It's a program that's continuous. How many more emotions do we bring in? How do we help it when a kid says they're sad? How can they self-regulate sadness?
Well, let's talk about that, because I want to know from David. I think we all agree this is important to have a tool like this, to do this and to teach this. So what is the program like? How does it teach?
So first of all, it's a structured program. So in other words, we just did an onboarding with one of the with a center. It's a rather large center, and we were onboarding a lot of therapists. And what they said to us after we showed them, we had them actually go into the program and look at it. And first of all, it's structured. It's teaching about emotions of the facial expressions, of body language, of the voice, what I'm feeling inside, and then it goes through about 7 right now, different emotions, but we're adding another 5, and of course we're adding anxiety, because we have a special thing for COVID. So that was a request that was coming out from a lot of people. But what a lot of therapists and people who are working with it say is that it's just very simple and intuitive. You go into it, you start. There's a video. It teaches the kid about the emotion. Then there's some quizzes. Now, what's really cool about it is you go out of the program. So it's not a computer program. You're not like just glued to the computer. You're told there's things to print up. You go do activities. You make there's group activities and project-based learning and collaborative learning. So and it's also can even be used on Zoom. So for example, one of the activities is in non-COVID times, sit in a circle, make everybody happy, do something without touching them to make them happy. And you could take pictures of it and upload it. And this I'll get into in a second, but Now in COVID, this is something that could be done on a Zoom therapy session with a few kids, and try and make each other laugh, or what makes you sad, different ways that you can actually work together. So it takes them through structured way, teaching them about it, quizzing them about it. But then the important thing is, with any learning, no matter who you are, you learn things much better when you are active, you're doing something. So you take a picture, you take a video, you do a group activity, then it really sinks in. One of the things that's important to mention is that it's not necessarily, just go through it once and boom, you've got emotions down pat. What we're finding is, the repetition is also important and also helpful. Again, it's very individual. Some of the kids will pick it up after once, twice, and other kids will, are going to be using it for a couple of years. But at the end of the day, this is it's a very, structured way to learn about it. And I just want to add something that's really cool. That was feedback that we weren't expecting. It came out of I don't know. It was sometimes you learn things about the program that you didn't quite know. And so one of the places that they're using it, they were teaching. There's a collaboration area, and you can actually, it almost looks like a Facebook. It's a feed, and you upload stuff, and the kids in the group can, there's controls obviously, but you can have them see each other or not see each other, whatever the therapist or the parents prefer. And but you can comment on other things and like them, and say, you look really happy here, it's a great sad face. And so someone said, we use this, the kids, you talked about bullying earlier, and it's like, well, the kids, when they're not on social media, we're talking now more like towards teenagers, because it is up to 11 and even up. It can be used for older kids, just depending on who they are. So when the kids start using social media and they're not on it, they're bullied. But then if they do go on it and they use it completely incorrectly or inappropriately because they don't understand, then they're bullied, then they're rejected or bullied. So this therapist said, I can teach the kids about social media and, how to upload things, what things are appropriate, what are not, what kind of comments you make. And it's a safe environment. No one else sees it. If they make a mistake, it's fine. And that was like, wow. And now so many people have told us that that's like one of their favorite things about the program.
So there's, within the program, there's a way for a safe, like a sandbox, so to speak, where people who are using the program can go in and interact with each other. I love that. Now, you mentioned that it's really easy to use for therapists, but also we want to make sure that people know that a parent could do this with their child. How easy is it for a parent, David? Because we don't know what therapists know.
No, it's easy. It's easy because you just, it's just set up in a way that it's kind of it's like almost like a course. You go in the first one, the second one, the third, and you obviously are allowed to jump around and do other things and go back and do them twice. But at the end of the day, it's not like you need to be very tech savvy to do it. If you know how to use if you know how to use your chat on your smartphone, you're good to go. You're
Okay,
fine.
good. That's a good litmus test. So before we get any further, let's talk about, if people have questions or they're ready to try it, they're like, give me this, I want to know, where do they get it and how much does it cost?
Okay, so there is a site, there's a store at emotiplay.com. You can also, if you want to add, and you go there, it's the price is $40 per month, but we can discount it. Anyone who gets it, who is from this show will get it for $30 a month. You can also just write us as well, and just to support at emotiplay.com. And if you have questions, if you're not quite sure if you want to get it yet or not, you can also just contact us, and we'll communicate with you. But go to emotiplay.com and you can go to the store, and it's and you're good to go. And
Okay,
it's a 2-week free trial, by the way, so you can try it out for free for 2 weeks.
Okay, so try it out for 2 weeks. But if we go to emotiplay.com, We can also purchase it, but you mentioned that there's a discount. I love this for our viewers. Do they need to put in a code, or do they need to go to support at emotiplay.com to get, how do they get the discount, David?
You just write, if they, so for that, for now, we'll set it up as a store, and it'll just be slash, and we'll put it, we'll get that set up. But in the meantime, they can just come to me and just write to support at emotiplay.com, and they're good to go.
Okay.
We'll make sure they get that discount.
So, and I gotta say, it's very timely right now, because there's a lot of people at home who maybe they don't have their usual therapy for various and sundry reasons because of COVID. Maybe they don't have all the support that they would have for their local resources. Maybe they're not getting as much in their school setting as they would like. So this is something that because I'm always saying to people, David, in COVID, you got to do what you can do. Like, we can talk about all the things you can't do, but what can you do? So this is something that your child could be doing at home with you, or with, because I know a lot of people are like, look, Shannon, I'm working and I can't, I got to sit there while they're doing school. And that's the seventh ring of, what. But I would think that an older sibling could do this with them too. Or maybe this is the kind of thing that because a lot of people are living with grandma and grandpa in the house right now. This is something that grandma or grandpa could do with your child. Or it could be something that you do later on at night that's a little fun and a de-stressor when you're not working on homework. Because it doesn't feel, I've looked at it, it doesn't feel like you're working.
No,
it feels like,
no, it's fun. It's fun.
I gotta be honest, it's got a feel to it that's very like PBS, Disney kind of, wink, wink, all the stuff where the kids think they're having fun, but you're embedding important skills in them. It's got that sort of feel to it, which is pretty much the highest compliment I can give you, David, because that's a pretty good company to be in, right?
Yeah.
So you guys, this is something that you can be doing. And I really hope that you guys will check it out, even if just try the free trial for 2 weeks and see if it's something that resonates with your child. Because this is an area that I think gets left out a lot. A lot of times parents will say, well, what's the big five? I want my child to speak. I want my child to behave. I want my child to be potty trained. Like, the endless list of things that people ask for all the time. But if there's anything having to do with behavior, basis of that is self-regulation. And you cannot teach self-regulation unless they understand, I am having a feeling right now. And then how about the other side of that, which is perspective taking, which we know is one of the core issues with autism, and that teaching an individual on the spectrum perspective taking will help them succeed in life. And we cannot teach perspective taking. The basis of perspective taking is first understanding that I'm having thoughts and emotions and that you're having thoughts and emotions. How can you teach that until they understand what their thoughts and emotions are, and that the other person is having them, and I can interpret them just by looking at them? It's kind of brilliant.
There's another wonderful part about Emotiplay, and that is the bonding it does between the teacher, be it a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, whatever, and the child, so that the child also knows I could share my emotions with a safe person. I mean, most of us, you don't want to say I'm scared, sometimes, or I'm anxious. It's hard to say that sometimes for anyone. So the ability for a mom or a dad or a grandpa or grandma or anyone, or brother or sister, to say it's okay.
Did we lose him?
He froze again.
I'll continue this thought.
Yes.
So first of all, the emotions are the core to the behavior. If you're not understanding your own emotions, and there was even a story with one of the mothers said, and this is funny because it's ironic. Her son came home and said, I'm really angry. And this was, he was in the group this was during the research stage, and he was in the group that was using Emotiplay. And the mother was actually happy that he came home and said, I'm angry. It was the first time he ever expressed an emotion. And it wasn't like I'm happy, it was I'm angry. But he was angry because something had happened to him at school that day, and he was actually able to express it. And then 2 weeks later, he even said to his mom, oh, you have an angry face right now. So he's putting it all together. He knows that's a facial expression, and this is how the facial expression looks. That's an angry face. You must be angry. And just kind of showing, that it first of all, it does work, but that you're able to channel yourself and express yourself as to what you're actually feeling. And that's it's like you can't just behave well without dealing with something that's going on in the core. Also just wanted to add that also we're happy if any therapists, also not just parents, if you're a therapist and you want to get more information or use it or do a trial at your center or whatever, we're also just same email, support@emotiplay.com, and we'll set you up and we will help you.
Traven, are we able to put that up on the screen, support@emotiplay.com? We've got Scott back. Scott, we hear you're having a bad storm where you are.
I'm in Chapel Hill and there's a bad storm, a thunder going. So,
well, please.
I apologize. So.
No. Listen, this happens all the time, but please be careful. Do what you need to do if you need to take cover.
Yeah.
So there's the email, support@emotiplay.com. That's where you can go to ask for the discount. But please try the free 2-week trial. What have you got to lose? Where else do you have to be during COVID? And I think you'll find, because the other thing, where I was going on the big five, the other thing that people always write in and ask us about, social skills. How can I be working on social skills? Because I want my child to have friends. And I think that that's the key to a lot of things. I mean, happiness in life is in a large part due to the relationships that you have and how successful those are, whether they're friends or people you're romantic with. And all of that is based on first being able to understand your own emotions and others' emotions. So, this is a great gift that you can give your child and yourself to work on this and to work on it together. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. What I thought about when you first introduced this to me, Scott, was there's in Temple Grandin story in the movie that HBO did, there's a part where I think it's her aunt, takes a bunch of Polaroids of her face to show her what her own face looked like when she was sad or happy or whatever. And she goes through this lengthy thing, and there's just a little section in the movie where, she teaches Temple about her own emotions. And I remember being a fairly new parent of a child on the spectrum when this happened, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in for a lot of work here." And the things that they're teaching on Emotiplay, it's so wonderful based on research that we've been talking about for years. The whole idea of video modeling and then going back and letting the person try it themselves and going back to video modeling. We know that's what works. So we don't have to, and as a parent, you feel overwhelmed, but you don't have to, because you just do this and you click the button and it takes you through it, and you don't have to go get a degree in advanced communications. You just sign up and do it.
Could I say something, Shannon?
Yeah.
One of the things that is interesting, and I'm a little worried about this, that as schools start opening up again and kids start going back to school, particularly autistic kids, a lot of the information about how to get your kid back to a routine to go to school is about routine. We got to deal with the emotions of going back to school. Kids have been at home with their moms and dads or grandparents or caretakers or whatever. They're going to feel sad when they lose that. They're going to feel scared. But likewise, the parents are going to miss the kid. So it's this whole concept of change and how people could say I'm scared or I'm sad. But as a parent, I could say to my son, "Well, I'm sad too that I'm not going to see you all day, but that's okay. But if my kid can't tell me he's sad, and I'm not picking it up, I'm not going to deal with it because I don't think it's a problem." So this is a way where I don't have to second guess my son. He's going to tell me if there's a problem, and it's real important. So that's why I just, I said, hey, this is, I could do something in retirement to help people get some good words out of some good products. I'd like to do that. So.
And so Scott hooked us up.
Yes.
Well, Scott hooked us up. And so we wanted to have him here with us when we talked with David. So David, thank everybody over there at Emotiplay. I want to remind everybody here, go check it out. Do the 2-week. This is my thing right now, is that I know we're sort of all like stuck in this thing, but like be willing to try something else. Try it for 2 weeks. See if it's helping you to help your child, because this is an important thing for the rest of their life, emotions. So go to support at Emotiplay or go to emotiplay.com and check it out. And then let us know what you guys think. David, thank you so much. I know it's late at night there, and we're so thrilled that you were able to be with us, and that I thought for sure it was your internet that we were going to have a problem with. Little did I know that it's happening in Chapel Hill, but Scott, always a thrill to have you here with us. Thank you for turning us on to this great product.
Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you so much for having us.
Love to both of you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy.
And I'm Shannon.
And you've got your Valentine's red on today, I see.
I've been wearing red all week, as much as I could possibly muster.
Great.
This is my sparkly red. It doesn't look that fancy on camera, but it's my sparkly red shirt.
No, it looks very fancy, very sparkly.
But I'm glad you brought up Valentine's, because I wanted to say happy Valentine's to you. I was saying yesterday that the world tries to make this a romantic holiday, and I say pshaw to that. I think that Valentine's Day is about love, and that love comes in many different shapes, sizes, and varieties. And I think it's a wonderful day to celebrate self-love.
Yes.
I think it's a great day to celebrate love for all the people who are meaningful to us in our lives. And so I just want to say happy Valentine's Day to you, Nancy. I love you. We've been friends now for almost 10 years.
Wow.
Which is amazing, right? And I just appreciate that, there have been many blessings that have come to me in the last 10 years, and you certainly have been a big one. And getting to know you and your family, I'm forever changed for it. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Shannon. And I feel the same way about you. You're a blessing in my life.
Well, it's just such a privilege to be here with you and to be with these wonderful people that are tuning in right now. I want to remind everybody that we're live for the next hour. You got a great guest coming up for you after we do In the News. And we're live on the big four. I refer to them as YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, and Facebook Live. Mm-hmm. And you can participate right now. In fact, we're saying good morning to Ivani, and we're saying good morning to KK. We're going to answer your question in just a minute, because our expert's going to be talking about exactly what your question is. But we welcome everybody that's on those big four that are watching, but we are also live on a bunch more platforms because Traven, our producer, is so amazing. We want to spread some Valentine love on him. And you can see, I don't even know what D Live is, but I'm glad we're there live. And I hope that if you're watching, you want to participate and write into us. Now, if you're watching us recorded, as we podcast to different podcast servers, we're pretty much anywhere that you can find a podcast, and we are a free download on all of those places. That's one of the requirements that we have. So take a look at some of the places that Traven is showing you. But if you like podcasts, go to your podcast, the place where you get your podcast, and look for Autism Live. If you don't see us, please alert us immediately, because we want to be there. But we think that we're in pretty much all of them. So prove me wrong. Let us know what we're missing out on. And we appreciate you writing in. If you're watching in podcast, you can still participate. You go to autism-live.com and write in where it says chat, and then we're able to see that. It's not in real time that we're able to see it, but we're able to see it later on. We also have a Facebook page. We love it when you guys like us, review us, follow us, share us. We appreciate all of that. So we've got some news to cover today. And then a little bit later, we're going to have Vince Redmond, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's going to be joining us. He's a regular here on the show. We absolutely adore him. And we asked him today, because last week, we were thinking we had him last week. And last week, the topic of the week was levels of friendship. Because I don't know about you, Nancy, but I really didn't understand this until they were teaching it to my son on the autism spectrum. That I never really thought about the fact that you have different levels of friendship and there are different rules under different levels of friendship, and that it's kind of fluid, that somebody can be in one level of friendship and something can happen and they get moved to a different one. So Vince is going to be with us in just a little while to talk about how we teach that to kids on the spectrum, but how we live and model that as people in our children's lives. And anybody who's an adult, whether you have a child or not, this is really important stuff. I struggle with this, Nancy. Do you struggle with this?
With understanding the different levels?
Well, and and the emotions that come with it. I remember very distinctly when my son was in second grade, there was a little boy who my son just loved, and he followed around everywhere, and he was like, I'm Michael's friend and I want to be Michael's friend. But then I would get these reports from his aide that Michael had hit him, that Michael had kicked him. And I was like, what is happening? And then finally the report came home from the aides that said that Michael chased him down on the playground, took the little ties to his hood, because it was this type of weather, and pulled them tight and then wrapped them around his neck and was choking him with them by the time the aide caught up.
Right.
And so they had to sit my son down and say to him, okay, if a friend is hurting you, your first step is that you have to say, somehow communicate to them, stop, you're hurting me. Because sometimes the friend doesn't know that they're hurting you. So you need to be clear and you need to say to them, stop, you're hurting me. And if you've been clear and said, stop, you're hurting me to your friend, and they continue doing what you just said was hurting you, then they're not your friend. And I remember them teaching this to my son, and I was like, I don't think I live that. I don't think that I apply that to people in my life, that, that I'm clear when somebody's doing something that's hurting me and say, you're doing this and it's hurting me. And I for sure don't realize, oh, that's not my friend when they keep doing it. I sit there and go, why do they keep doing that? Right? And it was I was in my 40s at that point, and it was very eye-opening to me, because nobody had ever taught me that. Is that something that you were walking through your life and knew, Nancy?
No, I didn't know it. And Wyatt used to be drawn to the bullies at school. He wanted so badly to interact with them that he would, what we call silly talk nonsense to them and risk being made fun of. But he wanted to engage with them. And so at his school, they had what was called red flag people. And there was one boy in particular that was a red flag that Wyatt was supposed to avoid. But it was like a moth to a flame. He was drawn to him.
Yeah. Well, and KK has, I think, hit the nail on the head here. KK said, hi, what should I do if someone makes fun of my disability as a boyfriend, but I still want to be with them? How to stop the bullying? And I think that this is what's key. When I heard the therapist saying to my son, if you say stop, you're hurting me, and they continue doing it, that they're not your friend. And you need to be aware of that, but that doesn't stop the desire to want them to want to be your friend. That's the next layer of it. And that when we realize, okay, that person is hurting me, but I still want them to be nice to me, even though I'm realizing that is not what's on their agenda, it doesn't automatically make those feelings go away. So Vince is going to talk with us about all this and help us to get our heads on straight, because this is hard stuff.
Yeah.
This is really, really hard stuff. Hard for our kiddos, but I think hard for adults on and off the spectrum. It's like shades of gray, but this levels of friendship, I think, helps give us a clearer picture, and Vince is going to talk with us about that. But shall we launch into our news first?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. Our first.
You got it?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. The first story is exciting news that Harvard researchers have unveiled a new technology to investigate autism. And Shannon, this is a pretty dense article. I don't know whether you can untangle the way that this technology works.
Well, it's funny because the thing that I was starting to say was our first story is pretty dense.
Yes.
that was exactly the wording that I was going to give. And I read this last night, and you know me, I just barely get a gripster on it. It's like watching a Christopher Nolan movie. Like
Right.
I sort of understand it, and then it slips away from me, and then I sort of understand it, and then it slips away from me again. I think what the takeaway is that it sounds like to me what they're doing is reverse engineering and going, look, we know that something happens genetically with autism. We know that there's a mutation. We know that there's a cascade of events that lead to autism. So what if we work backwards and take the cascade and try to follow it back to a gene expression and to see what happens, and then move it forward again and say, if we know all these genes now, but if we take a gene and if we mutate it, let's see what it cascades into. So you're looking at it forward and backward. That's what I got from it. And that they see that this is being very effective in mouse models, that they're seeing how just changing one gene has a cascade that creates one thing, and then another gene cascades to present a different outcome. And so from this, they're extrapolating that not only are they going to potentially find answers to autism, but they are also hopeful that they're going to find answers to cancer, autoimmune disease, and other genetic diseases. This excites me because wouldn't it be like the sweetest thing ever if autism research led to cures for other things like cancer?
Yes, it
Wouldn't
would.
that be just like an amazing thing for us to look back and go, look how we got here?
Exactly.
But in fact, what they're hoping to find is what the gene is that cascades to the more disabling aspects of autism, because then maybe there's a way that they can treat it and prevent the more disabling aspects of autism.
Right. So
That's
exciting. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description, Shannon. That helps me put it in simplistic terms.
You don't think the people at Harvard and MIT are breaking out into hives at my
No, I don't think so. Yeah, so exciting news. So we'll have to keep following that.
Yes.
And the next story we have is about another study that's been done that youth with autism see a sharp decline in physical activity between the ages of 9 and 13 compared with neurotypical kids.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, you know how I always say on the show, sometimes they'll bring up research and I go, well, that's a big duh.
Right.
Like, I think we could have guessed this, but I do appreciate now, after all these years, what this kind of research amounts to, like how it helps to change the world. Because you can say to a parent, listen, we looked at a lot of kids on the autism spectrum, and we see that, if you do early intervention and then you get to a certain age and your kid is going to become sedentary because they're going to get really drawn into video games. So you really got to be mindful between this age and get them moving and, let them play their video games, but every once in a while take a break and like really program it in, because it's going to help them with anxiety. It's going to help them with self-regulation, and it's going to help them to, build core strength, which leads to all these other things, right? We can say that to parents all the time, but, it's a little bit more robust, I think, if that's the right word to use, when we hear, a study has shown that, yes, across the board, these kids get less, and that this is part of what separates them in these ages of development, and we really have to stem the tide of it. I just think it adds some more credence to it. What do you think?
Yes. It adds more credence, and they're saying, they're kind of pinpointing that it's between the ages of 9 and 13. So we know when to kind of be aware that that's when the level of activity starts to drop. And compared to neurotypical kids, they did far less activity. So at 13, youth with autism reported only 1 or 2 days of moderate to vigorous physical activity, compared with 9 or more days with neurotypical kids. So that's quite a difference.
And help me if I'm wrong on this, because you're somebody, Nancy, who has always, you're an athlete. You've run marathons. You've been somebody who competitively jumped horses. I mean, you're an amazing horsewoman. I think you have had an understanding of your body and have always been big on exercising. You hike on a regular basis still. Right. And I know you have said to me that if you don't get an opportunity to move your body, that your life doesn't work as well.
No, it doesn't. It clears my brain. And I think for our kids on the spectrum, it's really important because what it does is those endorphins that get released when you exercise, it's a really great way to beat stress. And let's face it, our kids have a lot of stress and anxiety.
Yeah. And I'm not somebody who's an athlete. I've had periods of time where I exercised. Was that Wyatt that just went by? I didn't see.
No, it was John, his aide.
Oh, hello, John. But I'm not somebody who's particularly good at that kind of stuff. And so, hi, John. We need to have you sign a release. But anyway, I have periods of time in my life where I'll get on an exercise kick and I'll be doing something like swimming or, dance aerobics I really love. And then I don't stick to it, But I have really seen in COVID that it's really forced me to hone in and look, and we put a treadmill in the living room, because if I don't get on that treadmill on a regular basis, my fibromyalgia acts up, my thinking becomes really circuitous. I have more anxiety, like free floating anxiety. And I find if I just do even a small amount on the treadmill, like not crazy, I'm not running any marathons, but a small amount on the treadmill helps me to focus. I have seen that it helps everybody in my household, including my son. And I keep thinking about Temple Grandin saying that, she had to be on medication for anxiety for a lot of years, but then she discovered that if every day she did a burst of activity, not even like, exercise for a half an hour, but if there was like a 3-minute period of time where she got breathless, and she said, I do it in a hotel, I can do jumping jacks, I can do, squat thrusts, different things, but if a burst of activity to get me winded, that keeps her regulated. And I when you think about all the hormonal changes that are going through a 9 to a 13-year-old's body, I just think it really becomes important for us to recognize this research and make a concerted effort that between those ages to up the exercise level.
Yeah, and Shannon, they said that the decline continues through the teenage years. At 17 to 18, most adolescents with autism participated in 0 days of physical activity compared to 6 to 8 days among youth without autism. That's statistically a big difference. And it shows you that between the ages of 9 and 13, we first see that drop off, and that becomes a habit, unfortunately. Whereas if you exercise regularly, that becomes a habit.
And I'm sure, and this is maybe something we can ask, because we have people come on every month to talk about research, and maybe we'll put it in their hopper to talk about the research showing physical exercise and how that correlates to depression and anxiety. Because I really feel like there is a correlation there. Hey, we're saying hi to Jordan, who's watching and finding this a helpful discussion. Jordan, we're so glad that you're here with us. I just wanted to say hello. And I didn't say hello to Nasser or Amanda, so we're saying hi to them as well.
Shannon,
reminding everybody you can write in the chat. Yes?
I also wondered on this particular study whether kids with autism don't take part in school athletics as much as neurotypical kids. And my hunch is that they don't.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Nancy. And I was talking to somebody recently. I'm always reminded, we do our jargon of the day, Mondays and Thursdays here on the show, but I'm always reminded of the fact that I've gone to the dark side and I just throw jargon terms out and forget that everybody, and I was talking about APE the other day and I was like, APE this and APE this to somebody. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I said, oh, APE stands for Adaptive Physical Education. And, if your child has an IEP, you can request that they get an evaluation to see if they qualify for APE. And then another person was saying, oh, my child gets APE, but another person said, my child gets both APE and the regular phys ed. They do both of them. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. And then it became this conversation about, wait a second, there were people who were like, my child isn't participating at all. So it just reminds me how important it is that we talk to our support groups and that we talk about what are we getting and what's appropriate, although it's going to be different for every individual. But our kids need to move. That's the bottom line. Our kids need to move, and they need a lot of exercise. The more that they are physically moving their body, we know, for instance, that activities that cross the midline, so things like playing tennis or a ping pong or something like that, or even just touching your toes with the opposite hand, that kids across the board, on the spectrum and not on the spectrum, test higher cognitively after doing crossing the midline activities. And if you want to know more about that, I encourage people to go to Pinterest. We have a board on Pinterest for Autism Live, and we have different categories, and one of them is just crossing the midline exercises, and they have games you can play with your kiddos to cross the midline. So all of this we know is connected, mind, body, right? So the body's got to move.
And especially during this time when so many of our kids are virtual learning, it's important to build in physical activities in their schedule during the day.
Yes. Used to be that we would give our kids a break and let them have technology. Like, okay, you can have your phone or your iPad for 10 minutes because you're on a break, right? At least that was what we did. And now it's got to be the exact opposite. You've been on the computer for half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour. I hope not longer than that. Now, it's a break in the school thing. It's not the time to sit down and play on your phone or your iPad. It's time to get up and run, like let's play chase around the house. Put one kid in the laundry basket and have laundry basket races so that they blow their yayas out so that they can come back to the screen. You can have a break for technology, like way later, right before dinner or something. But you if you're doing distance learning, you got to take the breaks and make them physical. Do it with your kids. Let's all get in better shape.
Right.
Okay, so I'm glad that we talked about that. We have one more story that is a heartbreaker.
Yes, a really sad story. A Tennessee mom is begging for a miracle after her son, who is a well-known autism advocate for anti-bullying and autism awareness, was in a car accident. I don't know if it was a car accident. I think he fell.
Fell from a truck. He fell.
Right, and he's in a medically induced coma. Chris Miller, and he's better known as Captain Spectrum, right, Shannon?
Yes, and this is heartbreaking to all of us. I know that yesterday the update was, just bless this mom's heart. The update was doctors were saying that they weren't getting any brain waves upon scan, and they were prepared to declare him brain dead. And mom said, no, wait, because he still has medicines in his body from the medically induced coma. You've got to let that clear before you can test him again, before you can declare him brain dead. But we want to tell people that this family, if you're of the praying ilk, if that's something you do, like, please include this family in your prayers. This is just devastating to hear this story. They also have a Facebook site that people can go to, and I had it up and now I don't. But there is a Facebook site that you can go to where you can get updates about him. And there's also a place where if you'd like to make a donation to the family for his care, and because his mother and I believe his aunt have moved to be closer to the hospital. I can tell you because I have a family member in the hospital who's been in the hospital, and this pandemic is so devastating in so many ways. And I know that many of you have family members that are ill, or you've lost family members. But I also want to say that having a family member who does not have COVID, but is sick during this time and in the hospital it's just horrifying, because you can't go see them. You can't provide the mental support. Imagine for a moment, you guys, that this is your child and that they're in a medically induced coma and you're not able to just sit by their bedside the whole day. What this must be like for the family. But we do want to tell people that, so the website is, or the Facebook site is Prayers for Christopher Ryan Paul Miller. And if you go there is a place there where if you'd like to make a donation of any size, that you can. Again, that is prayers for Christopher, Ryan, Paul, Miller. And you can give your loving thoughts, or we have a thing that says starting at $1.99. That's a GoDaddy ad that has nothing to do with anything. Disregard that. But there is a place if you can make a donation of any size to Christopher and his family. We are sending them love and prayers and hoping that for the very best for this young man, and that he is able to come out of this. Devastating though, right, Nancy? Okay, so I think, do we have Vince yet? We do. Vince has just arrived. We're so thrilled that you're there, Vince. This is Vince Redmond. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's joining Nancy and I. He joins us regularly once a month to be here with us to talk about different topics. And today we asked Vince to talk about levels of friendship, how we teach this to our kids, why it's important that we teach this to our kids, and how we learn and model this ourselves. Now, Vince, we had a question that came in that I think goes directly to this. Okay. Kate wants to know, hi, what should I do if someone makes fun of my disability as a boyfriend, but I still want to be with them? How do we stop the bullying? And I think this goes right to the heart of why this is so hard, because we can understand, like, we have a relationship with somebody and we've already defined it. This is my friend, or this is my boyfriend. And then they do something that is, making fun of the disability is not appropriate, right? And how do we then take that and translate into, is this the person that should be in my life? How do we communicate that? How do we decide when it's time to let go of somebody? Because I think we all have people in our lives that are, not always our best, best to be a friend to us, right?
Right. Well, that's a lot.
It is a lot. Welcome, Vince.
Good morning
Welcome.
to you and to everyone. Now my head's spinning. There's like 8 questions there.
Yes.
I think that when we're looking at friendships, that's always you kind of backpedal a little bit to oftentimes, individuals on the spectrum, so children to teens to young adults, have difficulties understanding social communication, social nuances, social skills in general. So we want to see every situation differently, right? So given the situation that's the message about bullying and making fun of, I'm not sure if it was from someone in the relationship or someone outside the relationship making fun of a
It's
boyfriend.
a boyfriend.
Yeah.
It's the boyfriend.
Making fun of the girlfriend.
Right. Right.
Correct?
And she wants to stay in the relationship, but wants to know how to handle this issue of him making fun of her disability.
Right. So the first thing is let's make sure that everyone's understanding of what's going on. So my first recommendation would be for the girlfriend to have a sit down with the boyfriend and say, what did you mean when you said whatever, right? Or what was meant by this action? So then this way the boyfriend has the opportunity he's going to do one of 2 things. He's going to explain, maybe it was a misunderstanding, and explain what he meant in a low stress environment where he's able to articulate what he means. Or 2, he's going to realize he's not being appropriate. He's not being careful, and thoughtful and compassionate. And that gives him the opportunity to apologize and say, I was a jerk. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. And now we can have a conversation on how that hurts her by hearing that from someone that's one of the most closest people to her, right? And how she felt that was a violation of their relationship. So I think the first thing to make sure is let's sit down and make sure that the way we're feeling and the way we're interpreting things is what was meant by the speaker. And then if it was, then that speaker or the boyfriend in this situation has the opportunity to realize he was being a jerk and he needs to make up for that.
Yeah. I think, both of these aspects are really important, and Nancy, jump in wherever you want to, but I think sometimes we forget that communication piece, that it is important to go back and go, okay, so for instance, like you said, what did you mean? I have a friend who I love, that when something happens, like, sometimes you're with a bunch of people and there's like something needly gets said, and her expression is, she goes, "What just happened?" It's like this crazy, what just happened? And while everybody's still standing there, what just happened? And then, sometimes somebody will go, "What do you mean?" And she'll go, "Well, that thing that you just said, what was that?" And then it's all out in the open, right? And then the person has an opportunity to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm crabby, and that was inappropriate. I should not have said that." Like, it really raises the level of the conversation, and I think raises the level of the friendships. Sometimes, though, we just assume, well, that person is hurting me and wanting to hurt me, and then we start to shut down, and then the relationship starts to deteriorate. So that communication piece is important. But Vince, what about when you communicate to somebody and they double down on that they're like, "Well, I get to say what I want to say, and if it hurts your feelings, that's just your problem."
And those are people we don't want to be around, right? If people are going to be mean to you, regardless of who they are, these aren't people we want in our lives. So if someone's doubling down and saying, "Well, I'm just a jerk and I'm going to be mean to you, take it or leave it," leave it.
But I think that is one of the hardest lessons. And I don't know if it's hard for men and women, but I think most of the women I know, this is really hard, is that, like, sometimes if we like the person, we don't want to know. We don't want to, like, it's almost like we don't want to communicate to say, "Hey, I need for you to stop doing that," for them, because then they keep doing it. And then it's like, we're 100% sure they're not into us. It's like that book, He's Just Not Into You.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, have you experienced this in your life, where it's like you like the person and you just keep wanting it to get better, but they're showing all the signs that they're not treating you well?
Yeah. I think sometimes it's difficult, as you say, particularly for women, to give up and take the social cues and the other cues that this person doesn't want to have a relationship with you. And oftentimes, like I was saying with Wyatt, with that particular bully, he seemed to be almost more attracted to try harder to get the attention and get the relationship and to, foster a relationship.
And I think I personally have been guilty of that in my life. Earlier, Vince, we talked just briefly about this, and I said that when Jem was little and the therapist, there was a kid who was bullying him on the playground, and the therapist said, "Okay, we're going to work on levels of friendship." And he explained, that you have a best friend, and then you have friends, and you have acquaintances, and you have people you don't know, and you have, first responders who are people you don't know, but you have different rules with them that you can go up and tell them things. And so they explained all this to him to the point where he got it. And then they said to him, "So when a friend is hurting you, that you have to convey to them, 'You're hurting me, please stop.'
Yes.
And then if that person continues to do it, then you have to understand that person is not your friend." And it's almost like picking them up out of that category and deciding, okay, which category do they go in? Do they go into acquaintance? Which means that we still speak to them, but we no longer trust them with our deepest things. And when they were explaining this to him, it was like somebody had pulled back the curtains, and I went, "Oh, I don't think I'm doing this in my life." I don't think that I have people, oh goodness me. It was so eye-opening to me. But so and then I go, "Oh, okay, I know this now." But for this young woman who's saying, "I really like this guy, I want to stay in a relationship with him, but it's making me feel bad that he is making fun of my disability." I love you saying, you got to sit down and make it clear. But the bad news is, if that once you've made it clear, if that person persists in doing it, then you got to take another look at it, right?
Right. And this all comes from our desire to want to be liked and our desire to want to be accepted. This is everybody, right? Individuals on the spectrum, individuals on the spectrum. We all have a very deep desire to be accepted and to be liked. And I think a lot of times we stay in these relationships because we feel that if we do something different, if we do something more, or we do something greater, then we will be accepted and liked. And we stay in these relationships because we want that attention and we want that affirmation. The problem is if it's, now again, there are, in every relationship, there's times where we have to be vocal and there's times we're going to get hurt, but we know when someone's continuing to do it all the time versus having good conversations. You heard someone, we sit down and we talk, what did you mean by that? What was said, and you break it down, and either the speaker or the boyfriend in this situation accepts responsibility and says, hey, I was a jerk, it was a bad day, I very much apologize. Or he says, well, if you get a lot of, that's just the way I am, then this isn't someone who's going to accept you. This is not someone who's going to give you positive attention. This is someone who wants to be chased. This is someone who wants you to chase after them. And this isn't healthy for us. So I think we have to look at that desire for attention. And like we said, if we're looking at circle of friends, we look within the circle of people we already know we can trust. We already know that will give us good attention, and let's spend more attention with them. It could be family, it could be certain friends, neighbors, people in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and so forth. And then we get to this person now moves to the outer layer, which is now acquaintances and people that we know. And that's okay. People we know lots of people that are just people that we know, but yet we don't get as hurt by them because we're not trying to give them. Sorry,
they're very sought after gentlemen.
Well, I thought it would stop after 3 rings, but by the 7th ring, it's not stopping. So we want to make sure that we increase the people in our inner rings of circle of friends. Now, if someone has to be, so-and-so, ejected out of that realm and move into an acquaintance one, that's okay. And hurt is okay, right? Hurt is a natural feeling. And I think some of the learning we have to do with individuals on the spectrum is teaching them that hurting is okay. It hurts, it's uncomfortable, we don't like it, and we try to avoid it, but for the greater good, it's okay. It's a very natural response because we cared for someone. We put effort, resource, time into someone. We liked being liked, right? But we want to make sure this is someone who's going to give us back, just as much as we're giving to them. And if they're not, then we have to look at, moving them outside of our close circle of friends.
So Jordan has written in and said a very interesting point here. Sometimes that friend just doesn't know how to behave. Sometimes I think it's just my lesson to look at it in a different perspective if you think he has some good intentions.
Right.
And I think that that's a really important point, especially when people are young or when people are having difficulty with something. We don't just throw people away. But we try to teach them, hey, we're in this friendship together, and we do need to take their perspective in taking it. But for me, this comes down to boundaries, Vince. Like, when is it too much?
Right. And again, I don't want to, in any way, I'm glad you brought that up, because as I'm thinking, I want to make sure everyone understands. I'm not saying let's abort relationships right away. The first time someone says something that was mean, or says something that hurt our feelings, by all means, no. We do want to get to know that person better. We want to have multiple conversations of sitting down and saying, am I understanding this correctly? What are you trying to say? What did you mean by that? Even if it's, happening on a regular basis, sit down, communicate, because that's how we gather more information. That's how we will know if someone's intentions, as Jordan is saying, are pure and good, and we're just misinterpreting it, or they're good and they're just having a hard time right now because of X, Y, and Z reasons, right? It could be the pandemic or job or their own family or whatever, right? They might be having some problems, so they're having a hard time giving me what I want. But at least now we understand, and we're able to respect that and hold those boundaries. We'll be able to say, okay, I respect you in the situations you're in now, so I'm going to support you right now and help you through that, and then you can help me through my thing. And we establish boundaries like that. But when there is no good intentions that come out, and we continue to feel over time that my feelings continually get hurt, where I continually, am feeling sad and not fulfilled in the relationship. It's at that time we have to look at, is this relationship healthy or is it harmful?
Yeah. I know I have some friends who are adults on the autism spectrum that are just sometimes painfully honest.
Mhm.
And they I would say that there are times when I've had the opportunity to get my feelings hurt by their being honest, but I think in getting to know them, I realized that they were coming from a pure place of not wanting to hurt my feelings, that the intent was in no way to hurt my feelings any more than I always laugh. I went to visit one of our centers and I was there very early in the morning and I don't think I had all my makeup on that morning. But the little kids, they'll come up to you. This is pre-COVID. And twice within an hour, one little kid came up to me and I was saying, hello, good morning. And he looked at me and he said, you're old, right? And I immediately cracked up and the person was like, oh, we don't say that. And I said to them, oh, it's fine. I am old. It's okay. And and I said, yes. And he said to me, you look like my grandma. And I said, oh, your grandma must be beautiful. Right. And I didn't take any offense to it. Right. Because I knew it was coming from a place of pure love and it just is. And there's no way to take offense from that. Then the next child came up to me and said, you're fat. and it was like, well, but I have learned to look at that in a different perspective and to enjoy my friends who are on the spectrum because I know they're not going to say something to me just, to make me
Flatter
feel
you.
better.
Yes, they're
Exactly.
brutally honest. Children are brutally honest as
Yes.
well. And a lot of individuals on the spectrum they don't have that filter necessarily.
Yeah.
It's those social norms I talked about, right? They don't understand the social norms, right? Like you were alluding to, Nancy. They don't know the game, right? They don't know you say these things to make them feel good, even if you don't feel it's true, right? I mean, you white lies and kind of the social appropriate responses that we give, right? You don't talk about age, there's like there's off limit conversations. You don't talk about age, you don't talk about weight, our kids and individuals on the spectrum don't understand that. And again, like you said, it's genuine. They're not trying to hurt you, right? Where we might feel that we're being hurt, they're just labeling, or they're just noticing, or they're just, saying something like, again, like you were saying, maybe they don't like your blouse and they don't want you to wear that because maybe other people think it's ugly. So they're being nice by saying, that's an ugly blouse, you shouldn't wear that.
Yes.
Now that might be very hurtful for us,
Yes.
but in their mind, it's like, she shouldn't wear that because other people might not like her. Right?
So I do think that intentions, I'm sorry, Vince, I cut you off, but I do think that intentions are important and knowing where the person is coming from. And I don't know, for both of you, but I have friends that I know that are good friends, but I know that like one friend is not good in crisis. Like they're just not the person I would lean into for a crisis, but they're really good at other things and I love them and adore them, but I accept the fact that they're not good in a crisis. And when I'm in a crisis, I don't go to them and go, hey, I need your help, because I know that they get shut down. I don't think we're talking about those kinds of things. I think that, we need to accept people for who and what they are. But if somebody it's just like that Annie Lennox song, where she says, walking on broken glass. There's a line in it when she says, because if you really want to hurt me, then there's nothing left to lose. And if somebody really wants to hurt you, if they understand that hurts you, and then they go, well, I want to do that because it hurts you, then we get into boundary land. I think.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're trying to determine in all relationships, is who genuinely wants to be with you and have the intent to be a good friend, a good lover, a good spouse, a good boyfriend and girlfriend. And then those who are there to hurt you for their own personal need or their own personal gain. There's lots of people out there, and I hate to say it, that get positively reinforced by hurting others. Now, it's absolutely terrible, and I can go into, psychological reasons why they do that, but those are the people we don't want in our lives. Those are the people we want to make sure we have a very solid boundary, that they're on the other side dealing with their own stuff, not hurting us for their own need. Because you're right, our biggest weakness is if we continue to let people in that are hurting us, with no intention of loving us.
So
Right.
this becomes, I'm sorry, you talk, Nancy, because I'm hogging the time.
Then it's important to teach our kids social cues that make them aware of the various types of relationships and friendships, so they know when they get a block like that they avoid those types of relationships.
Right. And again, all the different levels, right? We're talking from, or the ages, we're talking from your youngest 2, 3, 4-year-olds up to your teens. So it's going to be a little bit socially different in each developmental stage. But absolutely, and this is an ongoing lesson. This isn't something that you teach at elementary school and we leave it be, right? This is something that as parents and clinicians, we want to continue to teach them as social relationships become more complex. As they move on and move up, we have to reteach, what are we looking for in the friendship? What are we looking for in an intimate relationship, right? If we're looking at early kids, we're talking about kids that share, kids that enjoy the same thing, kids that play without being mean, kids that include rather than exclude, right? And we're looking at those different facets. When we move into teenagers, young adults, now we're getting into more of those nuances of what they say, how they say it, how, are they genuinely interested in the things that you are? Do they listen to your interests and opinions, or is it all about the things that they're interested in and things like that? So this, this concept, and I'm glad, that you guys have brought this up, is something that's an ongoing relationship, or an ongoing learning experience for individuals on the spectrum, because our social relationships are constantly changing. They're constantly getting more complex. Even now, when we go from young adults to middle age, our middle age relationships are different than they were when we were in our 20s, right? They're more mature and more understanding, and that will change again as we move into our later years. So this isn't something that is learned one time. It's not something that's just learned. It's an ongoing learning experience. And us as parents and clinicians have to remember that. We have to remember that this is something that we want to continually support our friends on the spectrum.
Well, I want to go one more than that, Vince, because I think, I get an opportunity to talk to a lot, as you do, to a lot of caregivers, parents of individuals on the spectrum, and other people. They're not all parents, but they're caregivers. And I think, and Nancy, you can attest to this too, I think we go through this just as much. And when we have a child who's on the autism spectrum, sometimes it puts some of our friendships a little bit in a rocky place, that I am not friends with all the people that I came into this journey with, because some of them, like, it just didn't jive. Like, there were people who had a really hard time with what my new life looked like that was centered around my son's treatment. And they had opinions about that and things that they wanted me to do instead of that involved things for them. And they really couldn't accept it. And some of them were family members, some of them were friends. And I hear this from caregivers all the time. Nancy, are you friends with some friends I retained and I cherish them, but some friends went by the wayside?
Yeah, some friendships did not develop and mature in the ways that others did. And I couldn't be as honest with some of those people.
Yeah, it's almost like some friends that were like really good friends kind of got moved to another level, because it was like, I really can't share what I'm going through with you because it's not like, and through no fault of theirs, but they just weren't in a place to like hear it and be supportive.
Right.
For whatever reasons, not necessarily, anything bad, but I had one friend who would not accept that my child had a diagnosis.
Right.
He just couldn't. And listen, I know that what it was that he did not want that for me.
Mm-hmm.
In the fairy tale in his head, he was like, no, you finally got to be a mom. You don't have a child on the autism spectrum. But it was painful to be around him because he would disavow absolutely everything that we were doing. And he would go, you need to stop that. He doesn't have autism. He's fine. And then he would treat my child in a way that was not appropriate. And we would, like he would make fun of something that he didn't understand. And we would go over here. Let's talk about this. Don't do that. And he'd be like, no, you just got to toughen him. It didn't work. It didn't last. We were done.
And some people don't have that bandwidth, right? They don't have that bandwidth to understand the depth of what we as parents go through, right? In that you guys go through with having a child on the spectrum. It's not something that anyone can really understand unless they're in it. And sometimes they just, like you said, they don't want to hear the bad. They don't want to hear the ugly. They don't want to hear the struggle and the strive that needs to be done. They want to live in the Pollyanna, it'll be fine. And I think that's for their own need. I think that's for their own anxiety. It makes them feel better because, like you said, if it's coming from a good place, they don't want you to suffer. So they're trying to just kind of keep it positive. But that actually, as you're mentioning, can be more damaging than good.
Yeah, and it's coming from a place, like I know they didn't mean any malice, right? But it's coming from a place that they meant well, but sometimes even meaning well doesn't fit in your life.
Right.
But I think that boundaries are one of the hardest things on the face of the planet. I'm in a place where I'm wanting to make sure that I'm teaching that to my son, but I really got to check myself because I don't think I'm good at boundaries. And I got to be honest, Vince, I know a lot of women who say the same thing. Do you feel like it's men also, and I'm just only talking to the women, or do only women talk about it, or is it more women?
No, I think it's both, but it's demonstrated in different ways, right? When we're talking about social boundaries, we're talking about an infinite amount of different types of boundaries, right? We have boundaries in relationships, boundaries in intimacy, we have boundaries with knowledge that we share, we have, all different types of boundaries. And I think men and women experience and show boundaries in many different ways, right? Where you're saying that, women more or loose boundaries and trying to maintain friendships, but I think on the men's side, I think men put up too strong of boundaries oftentimes, too quickly, right? It's their self-defense to protect them. Me mad, me no hurt. And those boundaries come up very quickly where they're not willing to listen. They're not willing to feel. They're not willing to, as we were saying, go to the depths of understanding what this really means, what it really means to have a child, a friend, a lover on the spectrum, right? So I see that boundaries are difficult for both men and women. It's just displayed a little bit differently.
Nancy, are you good at boundaries?
Not as good as I want to be. Vince, how do we teach our kids how to deal with rejection?
Mm-hmm. The first thing, well, depending on the type of rejection, right? I mean, anytime we're teaching rejection is understanding why it was rejected and accepting it. I think one of the things that we try to do is, right, we want to protect our kids and we want to, stop the hurting as quickly as we can, right? I think that's every parent. But sometimes I think we might be doing a misservice if we're doing that too quickly because we want them to understand the rejection and that it hurts. And because it hurts, this is maybe why we want to be better at selecting our friends, looking at the friends, not chasing that bully, not chasing that guy or girl that, really doesn't like us. And really, showing them that this is a part of relationships that we're all experiencing. It's not you, Wyatt. It's not you, Jem. It's not you, Nancy, Shannon, Vince, right? Everybody will at some point be faced with rejection and be rejected. It's why were we rejected? Let's look at it, break it apart. Why was it? Is it something that we did, something we can change, something we can do differently next time? Sometimes we do everything right and it's the other person and we say, okay, that person just didn't want me or didn't want to be my friend or didn't want to participate in my activity. And we say, it's okay to hurt, it's okay to be sad because that we thought they were friends. But once that sadness feels a little better, now we're going to look for new friends, right? Now the positive part comes in. Now we look for other people. We look for people that want to do the same activities or want to share or want to love, right? So it's, again, as we were saying, a circle of friends, it's definitely an ongoing teaching. It's not something that we can teach just off of 1 or 2 rejections, because as the social complexity of the relationships change, it's going to change. But my very first thought is not trying to dismiss the feeling, except, we want to feel the feeling and know why we're feeling the feeling. Does that make sense?
That's really hard.
Yeah.
I think it's great advice, Vince, but it's like I'm just picturing, it's hard, right, Nancy? Because
Right.
to see our kids hurting.
Yes.
I mean, I think I'm not going to speak for you, Nancy, but tell me how you feel. I just want to go up to the other kids and go, would it kill you to be nice?
Like
I want to. That's what I want to do, but that's not fruitful.
Right.
Because then they'll be nice in front of you, but then what happens when you leave?
Right.
Oh, well, sometimes now they're not even nice in front of you.
Right.
They just, there are some in this world that we're in right now. I long for some aspects of the time period when Temple Grandin's mom, Eustacia Cutler, she says, the thing is that it was very clear to us in the post-World War II era that we all had to band together. And that when you were in a community, everybody's kids were a part of the tribe and they came with whatever they came and everyone had to accept them. That was what we were taught in school, in work, and in our places of worship, was that everybody had a place at the table and that your kid had to be nice to everyone. They didn't necessarily have to be best friends, but they had to be polite to everyone. And now we've gained other things. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to go back to previous eras, but we have lost teaching civility to little kids, to up through teenagers, to just be nice to people. You don't have to, be best friends and trade necklaces, but be nice, be a human being.
Right.
And it's sad.
Well, so many times I think in the world today, our kids don't see modeling for that, for being kind. What they're seeing, particularly in the political world, which is the news of that is everywhere. They're seeing an uncivility.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree. But I do love what you're saying, Vince, is that we have to allow them to feel their feelings. I think so often people will say, stop crying, get over it, suck it up. And yes, Marisol says have manners, but that comes from the home.
Right.
I think it's got to come from all sides.
Well, I was going to follow up with what Marisol was saying. Same thing, right? We are the biggest models. Our home is the biggest models of what we want our kids to look for and what we want our kids. So if we're being unkind, maybe not to our kids, but we're being unkind to others, or we're letting this political, landscape affect us, and we're yelling at the TV, or we're upset, or we're in the corner, complaining about things, right? Our kids see this. Right. So we want to make sure that we're being kind, compassionate, understanding, the best that we can. Doesn't mean we don't get mad from time to time, of course. But remember, the biggest, role model that our kids have are us.
Well, that's a very good point, Vince. And I take it very to heart because just 10 minutes before this show started, I was standing in my living room yelling at the TV. So I will work on that. Yes, because I was like, and I may or may not have said a few swear words. Just saying. Marisol says, but we have a big challenge, social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Yes, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. But you're right, Marisol, it starts at home. Unfortunately, you guys, we're totally out of time. Vince, we so appreciate you. And we know this is a tough topic, but we so appreciate you waiting in. You gave us a lot to think about. Thank you for being with us. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Happy Valentine's Day, Vince.
And to your lovely wife and your fabulous family. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies. Love you both.
Thank you, Vince. Bye-bye. And Nancy, happy Valentine's Day to you. I'm going to see you next week, okay?
Happy Valentine's Day to you and your family, Shannon. And we wish all of our viewers a very happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, we do. We'll see you next week. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.